20 people. Investigators at the UK Health Security Agency say the mistake at the Wolverhampton lab meant nearly 40,000 PCR tests were reported negative when they were positive. It happened between September and October last year. Researchers also estimated that almost 700 additional hospital admissions that may not otherwise have occurred were as a result. Bosses at the UK HSA say they fully accept the findings and recommendations made in the report. The number of people in England and Wales who are describing themselves as Christian has fallen below half of the population for the first time. The latest data from the ONS shows 46.2% identified as Christian when the census was carried out last year. We can compare that to over a decade ago when it was 59%. The number of people also who say they now have no religion has increased by 12 percentage points. The government's given the go-ahead to build the Sizewell C nuclear power plant and has committed £700 million to the scheme. The plant, which is being developed by the French energy giant EDF, will be built in Suffolk. Ministers say the move will create 10,000 highly skilled jobs and provide reliable, low-carbon power to the equivalent of 6 million homes for more than 50 years. The Business Secretary, Grant Shapps, says the announcement means greater energy independence for the UK.
It's a combination between taxpayers' money but also private investment, and that's, as you rightly say, is the next stage. But it's a sign of, if you like, the confidence that the British government has in nuclear as part of our energy mix. And a very, very important point, which has been driven home so clearly by Putin's illegal invasion of Ukraine and all that's done to energy prices, that we must have a mix of energy in this country.
China's ambassador to the UK has been summoned to the Foreign Office over a diplomatic row following the arrest and alleged beating of a BBC journalist covering COVID protests. A heavy police presence has been reported in several cities in China in an attempt to deter further protests after unrest over the weekend. Answering an urgent question on the matter, the Foreign Office Minister, David Rutley, says the UK government will continue to protect British values.
More broadly, we recognise that China poses a systemic challenge to our values and interests, as highlighted again by the Prime Minister yesterday, a challenge that grows more acute as it moves towards greater authoritarianism. That's why we're taking robust action to protect our interests, to stand up for our values. That includes imposing sanctions, leading action at the UN and strengthening our supply chain resilience. Let me assure members that as part of our frank relationship with China, we will continue to raise our human rights concerns at the highest levels.
A section of the new online safety bill's been removed following criticism by some Conservatives that it posed a risk to free speech. The amendment means big tech like social media sites will no longer be required to remove harmful material if it's deemed to be legal. The online safety bill is due to return to Parliament next week after being repeatedly delayed. The Foreign Secretary is accusing Russia's President Putin of trying to freeze the Ukrainians in submission. Speaking at a meeting of NATO foreign ministers in Bucharest, James Cleverly said Russia's war was destined to fail due to the resilience of the Ukrainian people. Ministers at the talks are looking for ways to support Kyiv's military and keep civilians safe despite constant blackouts and heating shortages. James Cleverly says the UK will do everything it can to help Ukraine.
Targeting of civilian infrastructure, of energy infrastructure, is obviously designed to try and freeze the Ukrainians into submission. I don't think it will be successful. In fact, I know it won't be successful because they've shown a huge amount of resilience and we will continue to support them through these difficult months.
Spanish police say the 3 refugees that were found on the rudder of an oil tanker must be sent home. The stowaways were spotted as the vessel anchored in the port of Las Palmas in Gran Canaria. The ship had sailed from Nigeria. It's believed the migrants had survived 11 days at sea. Spain's Maritime Safety and Rescue Society say those individuals have been transferred to a port where they're receiving medical attention for mild dehydration. The King says he wants a good game of football tonight as England and Wales go head-to-head in the final match of Group B in the World Cup. Now, to get through to the knockouts, Wales must beat England and then hope the USA draw with Iran. Meanwhile, Gareth Southgate's side are looking to bounce back from their draw with the US and qualify as top of the group. You're now up to date on GB News. I'll bring you more as it develops. Now, let's go over to Patrick.
Well, there we go, people. England are set to face Wales in the Qatar World Cup this evening in a crunch match that sets to pit Brit against fellow Brit. Not that we needed any excuse to do that, of course. Alongside Iran versus the United States, it'll be the final game of Group B. England, as you can see on your screens there, if you're watching us on your telly box, need just a draw to go through to the last 16, while Wales would need to win by at least 4 goals to have a chance of qualifying. Joining me now is GBNews reporter Paul Hawkins, who's live in Doha, I believe. Yes, Paul, our man in the souk. OK, what's the mood like, really? Because I would imagine if this game was being played, you know, say here in London or maybe in Cardiff, well, let's be honest, it would have kicked off by now, but it hasn't over there, I understand it.
No, it hasn't. We were over at one of the Wales fan parties that are being organised in the hotels where they serve alcohol. We can get a package of 5 beers and a curry for about 80 quid, and the atmosphere was fantastic. The whole first floor of the Intercontinental Hotel turned into a corner of Wales, suffice to say. In fact, we were there earlier, and there was even a little bit of breakdancing that had broken out. Check out what we filmed a little bit earlier and the fans that we spoke to.
Yeah, it's really important. We need a win. 100% we need a win. And unfortunately, we've got to do you over. But yeah, the start is a bit disheartening. But it is what it is.
I don't think so, no. I think there'll be a bit of squad rotation and there'll be a big performance to silence the critics of Gareth Southgate, I reckon.
Yeah. I mean, but how much are you looking forward to it? Because even if there was nothing riding on it, it'd still be a big game anyway.
Oh, massive game, massive game.
Yeah.
Like, when are we going to see this again? It's been 64 years for us. And to play England in the World Cup, a home nation, is a big thing anyway.
Yeah.
So I think we just enjoy the moment anyway.
How long have you guys been friends?
Well, we work together. We've been friends for quite a bit.
Yeah.
Before the draw was made, were you working together? So instantly you said, right, okay. Are you still going to be able to work together after this?
It depends on the result.
See,
you're bragging right.
I know.
Yeah.
There's sourness on that side. No matter what happens, 100%. No animosity. Good game, hopefully. And may the underdogs win, really.
Yeah, so that's some of the Welsh fans that we were talking to this morning. I was alluding to the Welsh fans earlier that we were with at the Intercontinental Hotel where the beers were flowing, and frankly, they're just glad to be at this World Cup, and they'll still be cheering the team on, even if they lose 5-0 to England this evening. Listen, Gareth Southgate, the England manager, is under no illusions about the fact it's a British derby motivating the Wales players.
It's like any two countries whose borders are next to each other. There's a competitive rivalry. For me, it's a great sporting rivalry. We've got to focus on performance. We've got to play well. You know, we've got to bring our quality to the table and give that the best opportunity we have of making the difference on the pitch.
Well, there we go. The nation, Paul. The nation. Well, the nations will be glued to this particular fixture. But I've got to ask you, predicted score, Paul.
I'm actually going for a Wales win. I'm going to think Wales are going to beat England 2-1 and both sides are going to progress from the group. And I say that because I just get this, I've had this feeling, perhaps it's the food in Doha, which I might add has been fantastic, but I've just got this gut feeling that I just think Wales are going to do it because their togetherness, their spirit will bring them through, and they just simply have to win more badly than England. So I think Wales are going to win. And just to update you on the football that's going on at the moment, because that is going to dictate who England and hopefully Wales play in the next round. At the moment, Ecuador and Senegal are goalless. Frankly, whoever wins that one will qualify for the next round. Netherlands also taking on Qatar at the moment. The Netherlands need just a point to progress to the next round. It's currently goalless in that one. So it looks like it will be the Netherlands to qualify for the next round who will play England or Wales and either Ecuador or Senegal. But we'll wait to see the outcome of that one. There's about 10 minutes gone in those two matches, and England against Wales, the big one, kicks off in just under 4 hours' time.
Yes, indeed. Now, Paul, look, thank you very, very much. I share your little niggling feeling there that the Welsh might pull something off, although, of course, look, hey, I've got to go with England. I would never bet against my own team, as it were. But, Paul, thank you very much. I'll talk to you shortly. Paul Hawkins there, our man in the souk. Well, joining me now is Jack Carson, who is in Wrexham. Not quite with some Wales fans, as far as I can see now, but no doubt we'll be surrounded by them shortly. Jack, great to see you again. I did see you on Saturday night at the RTS Awards. You were having a bit of a boogie. No doubt the Welsh fans will be doing the same there later.
Well, hopefully, Patrick. They're doing the sensible thing right now at the minute, and that's keeping nice and warm in the pubs watching the other World Cup games. But I'm assured that once the entertainment and everything kicks off here around 5 o'clock, we are going to get possibly up to 2,500 Wales fans here on this high street behind me. If you look up, you can see some bunting and Christmas lights. It's a weird mix of... It epitomises the Winter World Cup here, because Christmas lights and World Cup bunting. But as you come round, we've got some pubs with great huge Welsh flags in them. We've got a merchandise store with bucket hats and fluffy hats, which, to be honest, are getting very tempting by the second, because my ears are absolutely freezing here as the fog starts to come down here in Wrexham. The hotel actually just there, the Winstay Arms Hotel, that is actually the place that the Wales FA was actually formed in back in 1876. So this really is the historic home of Welsh football here in Wrexham, and up to 2,500 people possibly lining up this high street. There's another indoor fan zone as well, which has a capacity of 500 people. But we've got some entertainment here later. We're going to have the game on, and I'm sure it's England versus Wales. Fans aren't going to stay away. They're going to come and watch this game, because it could well be Wales's final game in this World Cup. Of course, their first one since 1958. Speaking to fans here, there wasn't that great an expectation that they'd go all the way. Some perhaps a little bit disappointed after, of course, their great performance of getting to the semi-finals of Euro 2016. They thought they might just go a bit further and surprise everyone again at this World Cup, being the underdog. That hasn't really seemed like it in this tournament, but come on, anything could happen tonight.
Yes, look, Jack, thank you very much, and thank you for getting hypothermia for us. While I've got you, bear in mind you are in Wrexham, and I don't want you to get overheard here and get your head kicked in, but what do you predict the score's going to be tonight?
I'm like I'm in behind enemy lines here, Patrick. I reckon 2-1 England. Like the same result as the first time England and Wales faced each other in 1879. There you go, 2-1 England.
Oh, top knowledge, top knowledge. Good stuff, Jack. Thank you very much, Jack Carson, there in Wales there for us. And, yeah, let us know your predictions as well. Keep your views coming in to us, GBViews at gbnews.uk. We're going to be covering throughout the course of this show as we build up to the Battle of Britain, England versus Wales, kick-off at 7 p.m. How do you see that big game going? But, yes, I do have another opinion poll that's running right now on my Twitter, actually. Just going to tease a little bit of what we've got coming up throughout the show, because I don't want to say, you know, we're moving on from the football and doing the proper news, but we'll move on from the football and do the proper news shortly, because I want to know whether or not you think that Britain is still a Christian country. The results from the census have just dropped, and it's emerged that Christianity is in decline. How do you feel about that? The changing demographics of Britain. We've got all of that coming your way. So far on my poll, at Patrick Christys, cheeky plug for my own Twitter feed there, 55.2% of you say you do not feel that Britain is still a Christian country. We'll be looking at whether or not you think it's right that we go nuclear and become energy self-sufficient. We've got all that coming your way, and much more, including a fantastic Mark White crime package about a massive monumental drugs bust. Mark White, never knowingly undersold here on GB News. But now, much has been said about the team selection for both sides tonight. Back to the football, back to the football. Should Harry Kane be dropped? Manchester City's Phil Foden, would he come into England's starting lineup? And what role should Gareth Bale play for Wales? I think he could start by cutting off that ridiculous top knot, if you ask me, but there we go. Anyway, has he got something to hide, do we think? Well, we asked one man who knows a thing or two about picking a winning side. In fact, a 100% success rate in an albeit brief stint as England manager. I thought he was robbed. He was robbed. Entrapment won. Former England manager Sam Allardyce. Here's what he had to say earlier.
It's a very brave man that rests the captain, and probably your leading goal scorer that won the Golden Boot, but it's the choices you need to make as the manager. If you are the manager, you need to make those brave choices, and only Gareth and Harry could know whether he's 100% fit or not. I have to say, towards the end of the game against the USA, he did look fatigued. He wasn't limping, but he did look fatigued, as well as many other players. So that would be the biggest decision of all he has to make, whether he decides to put him on and start and then make the substitution, or whether he decides to go with Callum Wilson and use Harry if he thinks he needs to. It's a big debate. The rest of the team could be changed and can be equally as good as the person who played in the last game. Whoever replaces him, for me, is equally as good. That's why England have the best squad in the World Cup. Well, this squad, I think, has always showed a great togetherness. I think that since they've been together and grown together, both on and off the field, they've had a very good rapport between each other, and that's very, very important. And you've heard You know, Gary Neville, particularly in the past, talk about sometimes when they got together, that great team, it was a bit fractious on occasions. This doesn't seem to be the case with the England squad. They do seem to pull it all together and all push and pull in the same direction. So the backroom staff supporting them hopefully will be an energised performance tonight and a victory. Of course, there is a big threat for England if Kiefer Moore plays. Aerially, if they're allowed to get balls in the box, he will cause the England defence lots of problems, as we've seen him do before, both with Bournemouth and with Wales. So that could be a particular area they need to take care of. But and of course, you know, Ramsey's had a bit of stick as well. But these are quality players on the ball, and I think Wales will need some quality on the ball if they are to do anything against England.
Big Sam Allardyce there, not a pint of wine in sight. Patrick Christys here on GB News. Loads coming your way. How safe could the online safety bill be? Is it a victory for free speech? I'll explain why, or indeed why not, very shortly. I think we were all sick and tired, weren't we, of our free speech being curtailed. People felt censored over immigration, over illegal immigration. People felt censored during the coronavirus side of things, their views on the vaccine, for example. And we all saw what happened, didn't we? We all saw what happened with Justin Trudeau in Canada. People having their bank accounts frozen. Does this online safety bill actually protect freedom of speech? The Culture Secretary has been accused of watering down that bill, but has she? And also before 4 o'clock, I will speak to a Qatari man about how he feels about some of the controversy surrounding the tournament and the country's human rights record. It's not one to be missed. I'm also asking that big question throughout the course of the show today, based on the latest census stats, which shows a marked decline in people identifying as Christian. Is Britain still a Christian country? GB Views at gbnews.uk. We'll be back in a tick.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
And it's about standards and public life. No, I'll tell you what's hypocrisy, Narendra.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin.
We believe in the UK.
No bias, no censorship.
It just doesn't make sense to me. He wasn't doing his job as Chancellor.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
I think I've seen probably quite enough of Matt Hancock to last me a lifetime.
I'll also be getting to know you better, travelling to find out what you think about the politicians who are fighting for your vote.
They've got to get this country back on track.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. only on GB News, on TV, radio and online.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
All right, people, football's done. We're into the proper stuff now. Yet another change when it comes to the controversial online safety bill, which, if you're not aware of, we're going to give you some facts and figures on it now and why it's important to you, why you should be aware of it. So it seeks to protect users of online platforms from so-called dangerous and hateful content. Today, the Culture Secretary, Michelle Donnellan, was accused of watering down the bill by making revisions to it, which she said would still block harmful content, but would remove the so-called legal but harmful provision. It's a very important turn of phrase, that, because what's harmful? One person's harmful is another person's freedom of speech, isn't it? And do we want to live in some kind of tyrannical state where that decision is made by, dare I say it, Ofcom? Provision in the previous version of the bill was that, legal but harmful, which has been criticised by free speech campaigners. Now, it's a very complex issue, so let me just, well, like always, simplify it massively, OK? Because I'm a bit thick, so I need it simplified for myself. Let's break it down. The original bill included a legal right for sites which host user-generated content. So this is Facebook, this is your Twitters, your Instagrams, and they want to tackle and remove illegal material online, particularly material relating to terrorism and child sexual exploitation. Yep, I think we can all agree with that. That stuff is abhorrent. Platforms which fail to protect people, in particular children, would face fines of up to a whopping 10% of their revenues. Think how much money Facebook and Twitter and all these people make. 10%, massive. There was also a controversial legal but harmful duties clause, which would have required the biggest platforms to ensure their users, in particular children, are not exposed to harmful content, even if it was not illegal. And this is where it all gets a bit squiffy, if you ask me, because it's been extremely controversial as free speech campaigners and a number of MPs, including some senior Tories, claim that the bill could be used as a tool for censorship, forcing sites to take down legal speech simply because it might offend. We don't have things like blasphemy laws in this country, for example, so offence should not be a crime, if you ask me. It's caused the bill to be delayed, and it's now 5 years in the making, going through several different versions. But why are we talking about it today? Well, a big shift in the latest proposals. In an attempt to balance the free speech debate, the current Culture Secretary, Michelle Donnellan, has now announced a refining of the bill, with the legal but harmful bit removed. Instead, firms will be compelled to give users tools to filter out potentially harmful but legal content they do not want to see. And strong protections remain in place for children, including enforcing age limits. So potentially the best of both worlds, some would say. Is it a win for free speech, or is it just watered-down protections? With me now to pick the bones out of this one is Andy Burrows, online safety campaigner. Andy, thank you very much. Now, I think we can all agree that children need to be protected from nasty things online. We don't want people getting radicalised by things online. But at the same time, people do not have a right to not be offended, do they? And dare I say, the legal but harmful element of this could have criminalised offence, could it not?
Afternoon, Patrick. So I think you're absolutely right. This bill would have overreached had it resulted in content being taken down because people were offended. But to be honest, I don't think that was the objective of the legislation as it was proposed and with the changes made today. What is really important is that there are measures in place to tackle not just, kind of offensive comment or, kind of things that people might take objection to, but really specific types of harmful content. So we're talking about things like anti-Semitic content. We're talking about deeply racist content. We're talking about misogynistic content. Those harms which we know can then spill over into the real world. Now, it's really important that the legislation targets those. The changes today, I think, do water the provisions down, but it's now really important that we focus on those harms that I think we can all agree go on and cause that real world harm.
No, I get that. There are concerns maybe that if that stuff isn't aired and then people can see it and they realise who the wrong uns are, maybe it pushes it underground. But I do understand that people don't want to see it when they open their laptops. Are there not already laws against this, though? If I went on Twitter and just said something absolutely catastrophically racist, for example, presumably I'd get nicked anyway, wouldn't I?
So there's two parts to that. Firstly, clearly there will be comments that then do meet the criminal threshold. Companies will be required under this legislation to then remove those, recognising that they are illegal. But what we know is that there's lots of content which may not meet that threshold. But then when that's being served up by platform algorithms to very often vulnerable people, that's where the harm can kick in. So if we're talking, for example, about content that promotes and glorifies self-harm, let's be really clear that that is content which already breaches the terms and conditions of these platforms. They then just don't enforce them. Now, what we'll really need to see with these changes that are being made today is whether the protections are still there for vulnerable people. So, if you're talking about a vulnerable young adult who may be being exposed to the barrage of harmful suicide and self-harm material, they still need protections.
Look, 100%, and that is certainly an example of where a bill like this could be used well. What my concerns would be is I am deeply sceptical of power. I am deeply sceptical of government intervention in our lives, not least exacerbated, frankly, by what we saw under the coronavirus restrictions. And if we play that out, the likes of someone like a Justin Trudeau in Canada, I mean, people had their bank accounts frozen. This guy claimed a national emergency because people didn't agree with him. Of course, he's supposedly a sopping wet Liberal. I mean, how he marries those values up, I'm not quite sure. But there are concerns that if something like this bill got into the wrong hands, a government could go, we don't like that, you're off.
Yeah, and one of the areas where the bill has caused concern right across the spectrum, from free expression campaigners through to safety campaigners, is that the Secretary of State in future government would have powers to really quite radically reshape aspects of the bill. Now, that does go too far, and as I say, actually, there's consensus across the spectrum that that's an area where the bill should be tightened and where actually, those concerns do remain valid. But what's really important here, and no one should claim that this is an easy balance to strike between the safety of users and free expression. It isn't. It's a very, very hard balance to strike. I think the question now will be, we have this compromise proposal that the government has published today. Have we got the balance right? And one of the concerns that I would put forward now is actually whether we have that, whether we have that Goldilocks moment, whether we have the sweet spot, or whether there's a risk that we now tilt too far in the other direction.
Can I just ask, let's say, I don't know, I went to a theme park and there was a particular ride I didn't like. I would deliberately avoid that ride. If I kept seeing things on Twitter or on Instagram or on social media that I didn't like, I would come off those platforms. Why does everyone have to be regulated? Because some people just can't turn off social media.
Well, we know that there's, a minority of people who are using social media to actively cause harm. When we're talking about suicide and self-harm material, for example, some of the posts,
I'm really sorry about this. I'm not trying to censor you, ironically. I've been shouted at. We've got to go to Parliament, unfortunately, where apparently Volodymyr Zelensky's wife is speaking. OK, all right, well, hopefully we're going to be bringing you very shortly anyway, Ukrainian First Lady Elena Zelenska, who is, as we understand it, addressing MPs and peers in Parliament right now. Be interesting to see what she has to say. Of course, she is the First Lady of Ukraine, speaking to those MPs and peers. We'll be bringing you that shortly, don't worry. And we'll be talking more about what we were just speaking about earlier on, which is, of course, about the online safety bill, but something else under the collar, maybe rightly or wrongly, a lot of you got strong opinions about this, and it's the fact that the census has dropped. And I'm just going to read you out some of the highlights, or lowlights, depending on which way you take it, of course. Some of the headlines, anyway, is that now, for the first time ever, less than half of the population of England and Wales identify as Christian. That's at 46.2%. Bear in mind that it's down from 59.3% in 2011. Now, two ways to look at this. Yeah, a lot of you might be shouting, screaming and going, OK, well, is there a massive, massive influx of ethnic minorities with different religions? Well, yeah, there is. But also, it's a lot of people saying that they're not religious and that they are not saying that they're Christian, which leads me nicely onto this question, which I want to hear from you on gbviews@gbnews.uk. Do you think we are still a Christian country. Loads of views flying in on that. We're going to go back now to Volodymyr Zelensky's wife.
Kharkiv, Zaporizhzhia, Vinnytsia, Lviv, Kryvyi Rih, Odessa and Chernihiv, dozens and dozens of Ukrainian cities which suffer the attacks of the Russian Blitz. Dear ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, government, my lords, and the great nation of Great Britain, Ukrainians are now going through the terror which will resonate with you. Your island survived the air raids, which were identical to those that Russia uses now to put us on our knees. We're hearing sirens every day, identical to those which were heard by the British generations. You did not surrender, and we will not surrender. But victory is not the only thing we need. We need justice. I came to you for justice, because justice will lead to the end of this war, just as it led to the end of the previous war. It was impossible to imagine that after all the crimes of the Nazi criminals, the Nazis will remain unpunished. It was impossible to imagine that the Londoners and the inhabitants of Coventry, Liverpool, Birmingham, Manchester or Sheffield would indeed accept that those aggressors would avoid the courts and not be accountable for the terror. We are imagining the same. We imagine that we have to do the same. And we need justice for our people who suffer from the missiles. As the Nazis assembled hundreds of aircrafts to turn into horror the British days and nights, Russia is doing the same with missiles and drones, Iranian drones for the mass missiles attacks. 70, even 100 missiles a day, and those cities who are on the front line survive the lethal strikes. Have a look what it means. This is the hospital in Vilnyansk in Zaporizhzhia region. We had the maternity unit there. Russian missile attack destroyed everything. 13 people we managed to save, but one newly born boy who was only 2 days old was killed. The next photograph was shared by thousands of people. The parents of these children had to find the gas station so that they could find the electricity, the power supply for her inhaler. She couldn't survive without it. That was during the blackout. During yet another mass Russian missile strike, more than 20 million Ukrainians remained without electricity, water, heat. They had no electricity for over 30 hours in some places. This is how it looked. The doctors were operating in the dark, and the transport stopped and communication. Our enemy wants to destroy the energy and hit us with the darkness and cold. We do not know exactly how many boys and girls and women and men became the victims of torture and violence brought by the Russian occupiers. But it's important to understand that Russia brought the systematic violence. In many deoccupied towns and villages, we find the chambers, torture chambers, which were organized by the occupiers. We have documented thousands of crimes, including the sexual violence. The youngest girl who was raped by the Russian occupiers was 4 years old. The oldest survivor was 85. These are the victims we know. How many victims we still don't know about? These are the burnt blocks of apartment blocks in Kherson. Russian army is hitting Kherson dozens of times a week, planned cruel attacks, and they are attacking men, women, buildings, schools and hospitals, which would have been impossible without the orders of the leaders of the terrorist state. In the 5 days in Kherson last week, 15 people were killed, and this is another threat to the millions of Ukrainians. We are talking about the mines. Over 200,000 kilometers of our soil are now covered in mines and unexploded munitions. When the occupiers retreat, they are leaving everything around them mined. Quite often they're hiding the mines and the explosive devices so that it would be difficult to find them straight away in the buildings, in the civilian cars, in the critical infrastructure. For example, in one of the flats in the Kyiv region, they mined the piano. That sums it up, their attitude not just to people, but to art as well. This is not spontaneous or random mining. This is a criminal policy of the Russian state, the element of aggression and the attempt to damage and premeditatedly kill as many people as possible. And these are just some examples of the countless number of crimes, not just from the 24th of February this year, but also from 2014, when Russia attacked Ukrainian Crimea and seized it and started the hybrid war in Donbass. All these crimes against Ukrainians and humanity are born from one primary crime. That is the crime of aggression of Russia against Ukraine. And Russia has to be responsible for this. Therefore, I'm addressing you, ladies and gentlemen. That's why I'm addressing the United Kingdom. 80 years ago, in London, not far from this place where we are now, in the St. James Palace, the document was signed, which helped to define history. The war was still going on, and nobody knew what was going to happen. But on the 13th of January, 1942, the declaration was signed, which recorded the will to make accountable those who were the perpetrators in the war crimes, crimes against humanity and peace. That became the basis of the Nuremberg. That's the way it looked. The declaration, which was recorded and signed by the future victors, they've signed, resolved to see to it, in a spirit of international solidarity, that A, those guilty or responsible, whatever the nationality, are sought out, handed over to justice and judged, and B, that the sentences pronounced are carried out. Ukraine, Europe, and the world need that type of justice now, and it can be started in London again. Because we know that justice is one of the benchmarks of the British way of life. You have got a powerful experience of the international law and defending the values of humanism. That's why we are addressing Britain. We are fighting for justice. But justice, like victory, is not possible without allies. The president of Ukraine has suggested our and announced our formula of peace. Next day, Russia responded with hundreds of the missiles. But just like in 1942, the replies of Nazis did not matter. We have to understand that together we can do it with you. Unfortunately, the International Criminal Court, which we actively work with, does not have the legal force. And they can't enforce the punishment against the primary crime of those who started the war. We need to start the special tribunal.
OK, well, you've been watching and listening to Ukrainian First Lady Elena Zelenska. There, of course, Volodymyr Zelensky's wife. She's been addressing MPs and peers in Parliament, rattling off a litany of issues that she says that the Russians have committed, torture chambers, rapes she alluded to there, of course, and some harrowing stories there. Also saying that she was here for justice, so it's not just enough to defeat the enemy, as she would say. Of course, she wants justice for all of those people who have suffered as a result of Russia's invasion. We're going to move away from that now, though, and I actually want to go back to the football, so bit of a shift in tone, it's fair to say. But look at the controversies surrounding the tournament being held in Qatar. Ahead of the England and Wales game tonight, the former England goalkeeper David Seaman says that the host country has been a huge distraction from the football, suggesting that there are real issues. So I wanted to speak to someone in Qatar, a real-life Qatari, to ask how they feel about the negative press in their country. And joining me now is also an England fan out in Qatar as well. Yes, there we go, great stuff. Is Alkas Ali, and he's made friends with one of the locals in Doha, who is also a football fan. It's Tariq El Sharif. Thank you very much, both of you. Right, OK, well, I've got to ask, I'll start with you, Alkas. So how did you make friends with the locals?
Hi, Patrick. How are you doing? You OK?
I'm all right, thank you, mate. Yes, you having a good time out there?
Absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So I have a business in Scarborough. So I've got a friend who visits Scarborough every now and again, who's from Qatar. So when I travel to the World Cup, they've been very hospitable. And they've met up on several occasions with me, and he's introduced me to some of his friends. So now Tariq here has now become my friend as well. So that's my connection with Tariq here.
Fantastic. And Tariq, it's great to have you on the show. Thank you very much. I've got to ask you, how do you feel about a lot of the negative press that's been put out there about Qatar? We constantly hear about politics overshadowing football. Does that annoy you?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here in your program. And honestly, here in Qatar, we are having the time of our lives during the FIFA World Cup 2022. As a Qatarian, as a person living in Qatar, and as an Arab, we are very proud of the state of Qatar, of what it has accomplished. And it really enlightens us to see all the fans from all around the world coming here, all united, all cheering for their teams, for their countries. And it does really sadden me when I see some of the negative media that we see from outside, attacking and criticizing. And a lot of the accusations is quite baseless and ludicrous, to be honest. And it's a shame, because we invite the whole world as an Arab and as a person living in Qatar to come and experience the World Cup in the Arab world, because like what the government says and what a lot of officials have been saying, this World Cup is not only for the state of Qatar, it represents all the Arab nations, and it's a chance for so many people around the world to come here and to experience the life and the culture and how the Arab world is different compared to the Occidental world or the rest of the world.
OK, I mean, there has been a big focus on things like gay rights, etc. over there. I'm just going to be really honest with you. I feel really sorry for the footballers in all of this. And, there are plenty of times and places, I think, where protests can be made. And, yeah, look, I've got to be honest with you, Tariq, I am very glad that I live in the society that I live in over here in the United Kingdom, and I don't necessarily agree, don't agree at all with a lot of the things about gay rights or women's rights over there, but I don't really know whether or not football is the place to be making all this virtue signalling nonsense, as we see England players there taking the knee for, I would argue, a cause that is frankly Marxist and nothing to do with human rights. But there we go. Do you think people need to just shut up and play football, Tariq?
Well, for sure, that's number one. And number two, I agree with you, Patrick. Unfortunately, what it seems to be very clear is that they're trying to hold anything, whether it's the LGBT rights or whatever accusations, just to misrepresent our country as a host for the FIFA World Cup. I mean, it's very obvious and it's very clear. I've met a lot of fans from the UK and from the Occidental countries, and they've been absolutely astonished from the image they had before they come here. And when they've arrived here and they've seen the facilities, the stadiums, the organization, we can be considered now as a very organized country in terms of hosting one of the biggest, if not the biggest, world event. I would have wished, as a citizen or as a resident in one of the Arab countries, where the media outside would focus, even if they have their criticism on certain rights, if they would be a bit more fair and to outline and outcast all the positive side of what we have here in Qatar, all the excellent international standards of organizations, the world-class stadiums, the fan zones that has been provided. I mean, I've never been so proud of Qatar as much as now because of all what we've seen. It's absolutely eventful and it's absolutely amazing. I actually invite you all to come and experience it here.
Well, I'll take you up on that offer. I hope you got a few spare bedrooms at your house. I'll be straight over there. You might regret
Hey, I'm more
that.
than welcome.
Yeah, there you go. You see, that's on record now. That's on record. Go on.
They have tents here. They have tents
And
here,
tents.
so
Well, I think I'll take a palace actually, Alkas. But Alkas, how have so how?
Whatever you like, just come and give it a try.
Oh, well, there you go, I suppose. Alkas, can you understand why, though, some people now are looking at this and thinking, OK, it's too hot to play football, it's interrupted the middle of our Premier League season. I don't want to say too much with Tarek sitting next to you there, but question marks as to exactly maybe how Qatar got the World Cup. Do you feel that maybe it might have been better for world football if it was somewhere else?
Look, the football. I'm with Tarek here. This is about the Football World Cup. This is not about politics. This is, and I believe that sports should be kept separate from politics. In terms of football, it's been fantastic. The weather has been absolutely perfect. It's not been that hot. It's one of our the temperature is like a midsummer temperature here. So it's in my view, the temperature has not played any part in making the World Cup any less enjoyable than it should normally be. In terms of disrupting our season, look, the World Cup is inclusive. So if we needed to bring the World Cup to the Middle Eastern countries, then we needed to give something back. So unfortunately, we had to do it mid-season. But I think our sport being shown around the world and being inclusive, I think it was the right call.
Look, both of you, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show, and good luck with the rest of the tournament. And I hope that you continue to enjoy it, both of you. Great stuff. Thank you very much. Alkas Ali there is an England fan out in Qatar. And his friend as well, Tarek El Sharif, who is just telling us basically how wonderful Qatar is. Can I just say, look, I obviously am not in favour of the human rights abuses that are taking place in that part of the world in general. And if I had it my way, then the World Cup will be nowhere near Qatar. And I think it's sports washing. And I think there are serious question marks as to how exactly they got the World Cup, of course. But can I just say, what is to be gained from asking Jack Grealish what his views on gay rights are? What is to be gained from asking Phil Foden whether or not he thinks it's right to take the knee? And also, what is to be gained from Harry Kane there wearing a rainbow armband or not, or a rainbow-coloured Rolex? I mean, nothing screams inclusivity like a watch that none of us can afford with a rainbow flag on the outside of it. Can I just ask, we even did the Wembley Arch, by the way. I was driving home the other day, the Wembley Arch, the rainbow flag. This is a football tournament, not a gay pride event. And I can't believe that we're still talking about this and it being overshadowed. Anyway, there we go. Moving on. Law enforcement agencies in multiple countries have smashed one of Europe's biggest drug rings. Yeah, shifting sound. Responsible for controlling more than a third of the cocaine trade across the continent. A British man suspected of being the leader of the crime group was among 49 people arrested in the operation to dismantle what authorities describe as a super cartel. It's not just any cartel. This is a super cartel. The crime group's activities funded lavish lifestyles in luxury homes across 6 countries, as well as, shock horror, large amounts of cash, plus police seized 30 tonnes of cocaine, grief, along with luxury cars and other high-end goods worth many millions of pounds. Our Home and Security editor, Mark White, has this report for us.
Across multiple countries, coordinated raids to smash one of Europe's biggest drugs rings. In Spain, France, Belgium, the Netherlands and the United Arab Emirates, 49 people were detained. They're all suspected of being members of a super cartel, believed responsible for supplying more than a third of Europe's illicit trade in cocaine. Among those arrested, a British man in Dubai, suspected of leading the crime group. He'd fled to the UAE from Spain, where he was also wanted for kidnap. €500,000 were recovered across a number of properties. And at multiple locations, law enforcement uncovered the evidence of lavish lifestyles. Luxury living, which authorities say was funded by criminality. High-end homes where the suspects lived and controlled the trade in drugs and money laundering. garages stuffed full with expensive motorbikes, and elsewhere luxury sports cars. There was, we're told, nothing discreet about the lives these suspects were living. The organised crime group is suspected of shipping cocaine from South America into Europe for distribution throughout the continent. The UK's National Crime Agency says the shipping routes across the Atlantic are constantly exploited by the criminal gangs.
The majority of the production is in South America, Colombia, Peru, and the routing from there en masse comes mainly through container ship, direct towards Europe, often into the ports of either Antwerp or Rotterdam, and then on land overwards towards the UK, or staying on the container and coming into ports at the UK south.
During more than 10 days of operational activity to dismantle this organised crime group, authorities say they seized more than 30 tonnes of cocaine. There's no doubt these raids are a major blow to the cartels flooding Europe with Class A drugs. But this is a highly lucrative trade that clearly funded luxurious lifestyles in multiple countries. Authorities are more than aware that other organised crime groups will soon attempt to exploit the gap in the market created by the dismantling of this super cartel. Mark White, GB News.
Well, I'm pleased to say that the man himself joins me now, our Home Security Editor Mark White, with me in the studio. Mark, shocking stuff there. There was indeed nothing discreet about that at all, was there?
No, they were living absolutely a luxurious lifestyle in multiple locations around Europe and, of course, in the United Arab Emirates as well. But 49 people have now been arrested, brought to justice. Let's take a look at where those arrests took place. First of all, in Spain, the Guardia Civil took part in 13 operations in Spain to arrest suspects there. In France, 6 suspects were rounded up in that country. And then in neighbouring Belgium, 10 people were arrested. In the Netherlands, 14 people arrested. And then right down in the United Arab Emirates, another 6 were told high-value targets were arrested. People who had fled, we understand, from Costa del Sol, the Costa del Crime in Spain, over there, including a British man who's been described by authorities as the leader of this particular crime group. He has now been brought to justice. He fled to the UAE, was wanted on kidnapping charges in Spain as well.
Yeah, a nasty bunch, no doubt. But realistically, I mean, the British streets are awash with cocaine. The streets of Europe are, frankly. Some would argue the ship has sailed when it comes to trying to tackle the cocaine trade. Will this make any difference, or will someone else just pop up?
Well, let's put it in context. It's certainly a very significant blow against one organised crime group. They recovered 30 tonnes of cocaine in this operation. In any given year, 1,500 tonnes of cocaine are seized worldwide. So that's just the amount seized. Obviously, many more tonnes than that actually get through to Europe and countries like the UK. So it is a big problem. And because it's such an enriching endeavour, potentially, for any criminal involved in the drugs trade, the authorities know that even though this cartel has been dismantled, the people have been arrested and will be, in due course, facing a trial and possible a criminal sanction. There are plenty others who will move in and decide, you know, to take up what is a very lucrative trade.
Yes, Mark White, look, thank you very, very much for that report there about a massive super cartel being smashed. 30 tonnes of cocaine, a very significant blow indeed. Yes, there we are. Right, you are with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News. I've got lots to come in the next hour. We are a matter of hours away now from the Battle of Britain-England take on Wales in the World Cup. Who's your money on? I've got a sneaky suspicion the Welsh might do it, but there we are. Anyway, are changes to the online safety bill actually a big win for freedom of speech, or should it be watered down a bit less, do you think? And I am asking you the big question for me today anyway, gbviews at gbnews.uk. For the first time, fewer than half of people in England and Wales describe themselves as Christian. That is a significant decrease since the last census in 2011. And that was, of course, down from 59%. I believe I've got a bit of breaking news. OK, all right, I do indeed have a bit of breaking news. There you go, people. A man has been arrested in Gloucestershire in connection with the deaths of at least 27 people who drowned whilst trying to cross the English Channel in a dinghy last year. The National Crime Agency have said. Mark White, well, rather conveniently, frankly, joins me in the studio now, our Home and Security Editor. Mark, I imagine joins well. So, in fact, we'll go to Mark in a little bit, actually, yes. But that is the big breaking news. The big breaking news is that a particular individual in Gloucestershire has been arrested in connection with the deaths of at least 27 people who drowned while trying to cross the English Channel in a dinghy last year. That's according to the National Crime Agency. I will have much more on that when we come back.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
I think I've seen probably quite enough of Matt Hancock to last me a lifetime.
I'll also be getting to know you better, travelling to find out what you think about the politicians who are fighting for your vote.
They've got to get this country back on track.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. only on GB News, on TV, radio and online.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Yes, hello people, it's 4 o'clock. You're with me, Patrick Christys, right here on GB News. We are a matter of hours away now from the Battle of Britain as England take on the Welsh in the World Cup. We'll cross live to Qatar and speak to former football manager Neil Warnock, a fan favourite here on GB News. Are changes to the online safety bill a win for free speech? We're going to be talking about that. I am right behind this. We're going to get stuck into it all. And for the first time in fewer than ever actually, fewer than half of people in England and Wales describe themselves as being Christian. I'll ask, does Christianity still play an important role in the UK? Are we still a Christian country? A bitter rivalry in the Battle of Britain as in just under 3 hours' time. The Three Lions will take on the Dragons in that World Cup crunch match in Qatar. We'll bring you all the build-up as we go live to Qatar, speaking to fans preparing for the game, joined by that football legend himself, Neil Warnock. You've had Sam Allardyce, you've got Neil Warnock coming your way. What next? It's a Rhodes Gallery here. We're Harry Redknapp away from the trifecta. Also this hour, free speech. Campaigners have hailed yet more changes to the online safety bill. So the government has dropped measures to ban legal but harmful content online, and this is a good thing in my opinion, because what's harmful? One thing that's harmful to someone else is just freedom of speech to another person, isn't it? But campaigners say it waters this down. Is it doing enough to protect people, especially children? Is it a win for free speech, or is it risking child safety? And for the first time, the number of people in England and Wales identifying as Christian has now fallen below 50%, as the number of people saying they don't have a faith jumps up to a third. Is this concerning? Are we losing Christian values? Are they being replaced by values from other religions, say? Or is it just a startling rise in atheism? Is Britain still a Christian country? GBViews at gbnews.uk. I've got a poll running on this as well on my own Twitter, at Patrick Christys. So far, 55% of you say no, we are no longer a Christian country. What do you make of that? But before that, it's your latest headlines.
Good afternoon. The latest from the GB newsroom. We start with some breaking news in the last few minutes. A man has been arrested in Gloucestershire in connection with the deaths of at least 27 people who drowned in the English Channel in a dinghy last year. We'll have more on that developing story in the next hour. An error at a lab which saw thousands of positive COVID cases reported as negative could have led to the deaths of at least 20 people. Investigators at the UK Health Security Agency say the mistake at the Wolverhampton lab meant nearly 40,000 PCR tests were wrongly reported as negative between September and October last year. Researchers also estimated almost 700 additional hospital admissions that may not otherwise have occurred. Bosses at the UK HSA say they fully accept the findings and recommendations made in the report. Ukraine's First Lady has urged MPs to help her country achieve justice. Speaking in Westminster, Olena Zelenska spoke of the suffering of Ukrainian civilians, saying many living on the front line have been without water, electricity and heat. She also highlighted ongoing torture and systematic violence committed by Russian soldiers, including rape. President Zelensky's wife likened Russia's war in Ukraine to the Second World War.
Ukrainians are now going through the terror which will resonate with you. Your island survived the air raids, which were identical to those that Russia uses now to put us on our knees. We're hearing sirens every day, identical to those which were heard by the British generations. You did not surrender, and we will not surrender. But victory is not the only thing we need. We need justice.
The government has given the go-ahead to build the Sizewell C nuclear power plant and committed £700 million to the scheme. The plant, which is being developed by French energy giant EDF, will be built in Suffolk. Ministers say the move will create 10,000 highly skilled jobs and provide reliable low-carbon power to the equivalent of 6 million homes for more than 50 years. China's ambassador to the UK has been summoned to the Foreign Office over a diplomatic row following the arrest and alleged beating of a British journalist covering COVID protests. A heavy police presence has been reported in several cities in China to deter further protests after unrest over the weekend. Answering an urgent question on the matter earlier on today, the Foreign Office Minister David Rutley says the government will continue to protect British values.
More broadly, we recognise that China poses a systemic challenge to our values and interests, as highlighted again by the Prime Minister yesterday, a challenge that grows more acute as it moves towards greater authoritarianism. That's why we're taking robust action to protect our interests, to stand up for our values. That includes imposing sanctions, leading action at the UN and strengthening our supply chain resilience. Let me assure members that as part of our frank relationship with China, we will continue to raise our human rights concerns at the highest levels.
A section of the new online safety bill has been removed following criticism by some Conservatives that it posed a risk to free speech. The amendment means big tech like social media sites will no longer be required to remove harmful material if it's deemed to be legal. The online safety bill is due to return to Parliament next week after being repeatedly delayed. The Foreign Secretary is accusing Russia's President Putin of trying to freeze the Ukrainians into submission. Speaking at a meeting of NATO foreign ministers in Bucharest, James Cleverly said Russia's war was destined to fail due to the resilience of the Ukrainian people. Ministers at the talks are looking for ways to support Kyiv's military and keep civilians safe despite constant blackouts and heating shortages. James Cleverly says the UK will do everything it can to help Ukraine.
Targeting of civilian infrastructure, of energy infrastructure, is obviously designed to try and freeze the Ukrainians into submission. I don't think it will be successful. In fact, I know it won't be successful because they've shown a huge amount of resilience, and we will continue to support them through these difficult months.
And the King says he wants a good game of football tonight as England and Wales go head-to-head in the final match of Group B in the World Cup. To get through to the knockouts, Wales must beat England and hope the USA draw with Iran. Meanwhile, Gareth Southgate's side are looking to bounce back from their draw with the US and qualify as top of the group. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Patrick.
Welcome back, everybody. Now we're getting to the business end of the World Cup group stages. Tonight, the final game of the Group B will be played with the two home nations that qualify for the tournament, England versus Wales. They're facing each other. It's a fixture that will pit Brit against Brit. It's been claimed by a former player that King Charles just wants it to be a good game. Yeah, very diplomatic there. Gary Bennett, who used to play for Sunderland, said he asked Charles about it when collecting his MBE at the weekend. Oh, well. Joining me now is GB News' reporter Paul Hawkins, who's in Doha. Paul, it should be a fantastic game, one that Jack Grealish might describe as the best thing since sliced veg.
Yeah, he might do. Look, it could be absolutely rubbish and it finishes goalless and all the hype was a load of nonsense. We don't know what's going to happen. Hopefully it should be good. Frankly, Wales have to win, so they're going to have to attack. They're going to have to push forward, and they're certainly going to have to up their performance from the previous game against Iran. Equally, England are going to have to up their performance from their game against the USA, where they were slow, they were lethargic, they were taking... Each individual player was taking a long time to make their decisions, and invariably when they took that decision, it was the wrong one. So they're going to have to think quicker and be quicker. And of course, because it's a British derby, it's going to make for a faster-paced match, and it's one of the late kickoffs, 10 o'clock local time here. So the temperature will be at a decent low 20s. England and Wales fans are looking forward to it. Wales fans thinking, oh, you know what, at least we got to a World Cup, so it doesn't matter if we go out. But other Wales fans that we've spoken to are saying, look, we can do this. We can beat England, and hopefully the USA draw with Iran, and then we're through to the next round. So this is what England and Wales fans have been telling us.
Yeah, it's really important. We need a win. 100% we need a win. And unfortunately, we've got to do you over. But yeah, the start is a bit disheartening. But it is what it is.
I don't think so, no. I think there'll be a bit of squad rotation and there'll be a big performance to silence the critics of Gareth Southgate, I reckon.
Yeah. I mean, but how much are you looking forward to it? Because even if there was nothing riding on it, it'd still be a big game anyway.
Oh, massive game, massive game. Yeah. Like, when are we going to see this again? It's been 64 years for us. And to play England in the World Cup, a home nation, is a big thing anyway. Yeah. So I think we just enjoy the moment anyway.
How long have you guys been friends?
Well, we worked together. We've been friends for quite a bit.
Yeah. Before the draw was made, were you working together? So instantly you said, right, okay. Are you still going to be able to work together after this?
Depends on the result.
See,
you're bragging right.
I know. There's sourness on that side. No matter what happens, 100%. No animosity. Good game, hopefully, and may the underdogs win. Really.
Yeah, those underdogs being Wales, but as Rob Page, the Wales manager, said, they're hoping to invoke that spirit of the Saudis, the Japanese, the Ghanaians at this World Cup. There have been shock upsets, and so Wales can do it. For England, big question marks over why Gareth Southgate won't pick or hasn't really used Phil Foden, one of England's best players. He left him on the bench for the whole of the USA game. He only came on at the end against Iran, and pretty much every England fan we've spoken to said he has to use Phil Foden more, if not starting with him, then at least give him one whole half. So it'll be interesting to see what the selection comes through on that one. In terms of the current matches that are underway, because they affect who England and Wales could play in the next round, the Netherlands currently beating Qatar 1-0. So with that, those 3 points, they're through to the next round, and Senegal are currently beating Ecuador. So if it stays that way, then those two will go through to the next phase and play either England, Wales or Iran.
Yes, Paul, thank you very much. Paul Hawkins there in Doha, in Qatar, our man in the souk, just whizzing you through what we can expect from tonight's game. Great stuff, Paul. Thank you very much. I will talk to you again very, very shortly. Hopefully the Welsh don't invoke the spirit of the Saudis too much. We wouldn't want Sharia law on the streets of Cardiff, would we? But I get what he's trying to say there. They want to invoke that underdog spirit. Who's your money on? I've got a sneaky suspicion that the Welsh might just pull something off here. But we are going to go now to Sophie Reaper, who's in Manchester with English fans, and Jack Carson, who's in Wrexham, who's going to be freezing his backside off, hopefully, with some Welsh fans. Let's start with Sophie Reaper, who is in Manchester for us. Sophie, good to see you again. Yes, we last saw each other at the RTS Awards. Fantastic stuff. But you're outside now and presumably freezing. What's going on?
I am indeed, Patrick. Well, it's 3 hours, just under 3 hours now until kick-off. And as the sun has set here in Manchester, the tension has started to rise. I'm outside the Road to Victory, which is the largest fan park in Europe. They've got a 140 square metre screen, and we're expecting around 6,000 England fans to attend tonight. Now, I can tell you, I was here as a fan for the England versus USA game, and the atmosphere was just absolutely electric. We had Sweet Caroline, we had It's Coming Home. Everyone had huge expectations. Of course, it was a 0-0 draw, so it was a little bit underwhelming in terms of the actual football, but the atmosphere was worth writing home about, and I'm sure it's going to be exactly the same here tonight. They're just putting the final touches on security. Of course, it's a massive feat to host 6,000 people anywhere, let alone England fans. So I'm sure the atmosphere is going to be absolutely electric, and we can obviously, here in England, in Manchester, we're hoping for that Lions victory.
Yes, indeed, and no doubt a lot of Mancunians from the blue half of Manchester will be hoping that Phil Foden gets a kick of the ball tonight. Thank you very much, Sophie. Great to have you on the show again, reporting from a very, very cold Manchester. Sophie Reaper there. Right, OK, well, our other reporter, Jack Carson, has been in Wrexham for us. OK, a fantastic case study, Wrexham, actually, because they've just been taken over, haven't they? They've been the feature of a Netflix series or Disney series, or one of them, I don't know, anyway. And Ryan Reynolds and some other American actor I'd never heard of have taken it over, and apparently they're top of the league. Who knew? But there we go. Well, Jack Carson has been speaking to various different Welsh people to get their views about when they take on the English later tonight.
I think today, we've got to be up for it today. So we're going to go guns blazing today. So, and we got to score 4 goals. Let's have 4 goals.
I was absolutely devastated to hear the result with Iran. So we're hoping better things tonight.
I mean, likely it is probably. England will probably win, but you've got to have faith, haven't you? You've got to keep up thinking that Wales will do it, and hopefully they will. Because I mean, stranger things have happened. Leicester won the league, so that's 5,000 to 1. I think we're looking about 80 to 1. So, you know, if we get through, we get through.
Ah, well, there we go. That's what the English think. That's what the Welsh think. Make sure you stay tuned here. We'll bring you up to date as and when any news drops. We've also got some footballing royalties, some footballing legends coming your way. You've already had Big Sam. You're going to have Neil Warnock soon enough. But you are with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News. I'm going to park the football now for a bit, and we'll do what I would regard as proper news, which is probably what you all want anyways. Coming up, the government's been accused of watering down online safety laws aimed at protecting children after it dropped measures to ban legal but harmful content. People felt silenced during the coronavirus pandemic. Look at what happened in Canada as well. People have their bank accounts frozen. People feel as though they can't express their views when it comes to things like trans rights. Look at J.K. Rowling, for example, when it comes to things like what's going on in the channel. I think that it's a good thing. Now, you shouldn't be biffed for having legal but harmful views. If they're legal, and that is that. We're talking about all of that, and as well the results of the census. It's emerged that for the first time in history, England and Wales, well, fewer than half of the population now regard themselves as Christian. Are we still a Christian country? GB views at gbnews.uk. Keep those views coming in. I promise you we will go to those very, very shortly. But let's have a look at the weather.
Hello, I'm Ada McGibbon from the Met Office. If you're lucky, you've got blue skies and sunshine this afternoon. Western areas, northern Scotland, but for many other areas, it's widespread low cloud, mist and some stubborn fog patches persisting through the day. At the moment, weather systems are approaching from the west, but they're slowing down. They're coming up against high pressure, which is holding firm. And that's why we've got light winds, dry weather across the UK, apart from 1 or 2 showers in the far southeast. And this extensive area of low cloud, mist and fog. Now, the bright white areas are where we've got fog, southern and central Scotland, parts of northern and central England and Wales. Hill fog predominantly, but some mistiness at lower levels. Some fog patches further west and north as well under clearing skies overnight. And it's here where we're likely to see a touch of frost come dawn. But for most, it's 3 or 4 Celsius and another gloomy start with some poor visibility on the roads during Wednesday morning. And again, it's going to take some time for that low cloud, mist and fog to lift in some spots. The fog will persist through the day, for example, North York Moors across the Grampians into the southern uplands. But for, again, northern areas, south, we'll see brighter skies, a freshening breeze, 12 Celsius in Devon and Cornwall. That's as high as the temperatures will get. For many, it's mid to high single figures. And for Northern Ireland, it clouds over with some rain arriving later on, that rain pushing into western Scotland by evening. It's light, it's on and off, and it will be accompanied by a freshening breeze, but it will keep the fog away on Thursday morning. Elsewhere across the UK, it is extensive low cloud mist and fog once again. Some very dense fog patches and widespread across central and southern parts of England, so it could be tricky first thing on the roads once more. And that fog will take some time through Thursday to clear. The sun, of course, is weak at this time of year. So another misty, murky day on Thursday for many. Friday brings a freshening breeze from the east, so it's going to be brighter, but also turn a bit colder.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by 2 of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Yes, OK, welcome back. It's Patrick Christys here on GB News. Now, the government has dropped measures to ban legal but harmful web content in what campaigners are calling a watering down of the online safety bill. They're saying it's very hard to understand. Well, maybe let's just try harder, because it's not that hard to understand. The Culture Secretary, Michelle Donnellan, says that removing the restriction marks a more common-sense approach. Look, let's just break this down for people, OK? Basically, do you want a tyrannical state that can control every single thing that you say online, and if someone's offended, you can turn into a criminal? Or do you actually think maybe live and let live a bit, whilst also maintaining things like child safety? There we go. Labour Shadow Minister for Work and Pensions, Jonathan Ashworth, which is apparently difficult for me to say, warned that the watered-down measures would fail to adequately safeguard online kids.
So there is concern about the fact that they appear to be weakening that bill, but we certainly do need a form of online safety bill to protect people. We've seen people be driven into the most tragic of circumstances because of content that they've been able to find online. And I'm a parent, I've got 2 girls, an 11-year-old and a 9-year-old. I mean, it actually terrifies me to think that they might be able to find horrible material, particularly at stages in their life when they are vulnerable, because we all know adolescence is a vulnerable time.
Yes, Jonathan Uthras there with the latest of his views. Anyway, in a few moments, I'll speak to Helena Ivanov, a researcher at the Henry Jackson Society. But first, it's a very complex issue, this, and I just want to break it down for you. Let's get you some facts and figures on all of this online safety bill stuff, because it sounds like it's a little bit dead in the water, but it's not really, I promise you. The original bill included a legal right for sites which host user-generated content, the likes of Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of those people, to tackle and remove illegal material online. So, particularly material that I think we can all agree shouldn't be there, things relating to child sexual exploitation, terrorism, all of that nasty stuff. Platforms which fail to protect people, in particular children, would face fines of up to 10% of their revenues. When you consider how much the likes of Twitter and Facebook and Instagram make, that is a wedge, isn't it? There was also a controversial legal but harmful duties clause, which is where it gets very controversial. It would have required the biggest platforms to ensure their users, in particular kids, are not exposed to harmful content, even if it was not illegal. Now, it's been extremely controversial as free speech campaigners and a number of MPs, including some senior Tories, claim that the bill could be used as a tool for online censorship, forcing sites to take down legal speech simply because it might offend people. And we cannot live in this world, people, can we? Because, you know, one man's offence is another man's free speech, or indeed comedy, or just opinion, really. Anyway, it's caused the bill to be delayed, and it's now 5 years in the making, going through several different versions. But why are we talking about it today, you may ask? Well, a big shift in the latest proposals in an attempt to balance the free speech debate. The current Culture Secretary, Michelle Donnellan, has officially announced a refining of this bill, with the legal but harmful duties removed. Instead, firms will be compelled to give users tools to filter out potentially harmful but legal content. And strong protections remain in place for children, including enforcing age limits, etc. So, is this now a victory for freedom of speech, or does it leave our children dangerously exposed online? Joining me now is Helena Ivanov, who is researcher at the Henry Jackson Society. Helena, great to have you on the show. I am absolutely terrified, not of seeing something online that I don't like, not of seeing some material that I think maybe should be banned, for example, and hope that the authorities do it, but I'm very fearful of living in a world where some faceless individual in an ivory tower in Whitehall, or dare I say it, the Ofcom offices, gets to decide what is and isn't offensive. I find that tyrannical.
I mean, I completely agree with you. I think it is really hard to establish what exactly is and isn't offensive. And as you pointed out before, certain things that can be offensive to some people might not be offensive to others. I mean, let's point to the example of the recent musical video of Taylor Swift, in which she shows herself standing on a scale which says fat. Many people have been offended by this, resulting in Taylor Swift ultimately removing this from her musical video. But at the end of the day, what she was trying to communicate is that she, like many other women across the globe, is fighting with the narratives of what a beautiful woman should look like. So in this case, while some people have been offended by what she's done, other people have felt that a very famous, prominent individual is also partaking in the same problem as they are. So in that sense, I think this online safety bill is trying to make a healthy balance, whereby it doesn't try to establish what, is and isn't offensive. At the same time, it allows people to choose what their feed is going to look like, because now people can alter the content that they're going to get exposed to. But at the end of the day, and this is the most important thing, the children are protected.
Yeah, look, every single person can agree that people want children to be protected online, and the online world can be a bit like the Wild West. You can't absolutely put it under lock and key. Dare I say it, maybe parents should for once take a little bit of personal responsibility and check what their children are viewing online, put their own kind of protections there, or, goodness gracious me, maybe enforce some rules at home, like you're not allowed on social media. Why does the government have to step in to do it? But my main concern with this is that if it fell into the wrong hands, like, for example, Justin Trudeau in Canada, then before you know it, someone just having a view that differs from the government's view on something could find themselves slapped with a fine, or have their bank accounts frozen, or be criminalised. And I don't really want to live in that world.
No, I think what this online safety bill is basically saying, look, we have a legislation that clearly says these things are legal and these things are illegal. Those things have been agreed upon, in democratic countries with democratically elected governments. And clearly this online safety bill is very explicitly going to prohibit such content, which in turn basically means that you can't have arbitrary decisions made by individuals as to whether something is or isn't offensive and whether someone's account should or shouldn't be removed. And I think, in fact, this is giving more power to the people rather than the tech companies who could just arbitrarily decide, let's remove this or let's not remove that.
Yeah. But this is why I don't think something like, oh, it's legal but harmful would work, because there's a complete sliding scale on this stuff. For example, I found the Balenciaga stuff, if everyone's not aware of it, I mean, it was an advertising campaign from a fashion brand that some have accused it would appear to promote things like, well, child pornography and child sexual exploitation. Of course, Balenciaga would deny all of this stuff, although difficult to see how they would. But that seemed to not get got a bit of pushback. But celebrities on that have still maintained their links with Balenciaga. If that had been someone saying, you know, oh, well, trans men aren't men or whatever, then they would have pulled back from that. It's a sliding scale of what people find offensive, isn't it? And I don't really think we can live in that world, because who makes those rules?
No, absolutely. I think it is. I mean, at the end of the day, whether or not you find something offensive is so strongly dependent upon your personal experiences, the way you grew up, your cultural and other kinds of background. And subsequently, if we were to say, let's restrict everything that could potentially be offensive, we wouldn't be able to talk about anything, because anything can potentially be offensive.
But it'd be on it would be, sorry to interrupt, but it would be on the woke brigade's terms. So you would have to say things like, you know, we need trans men in women's prisons, or you can't possibly pass a comment on what we can see with our own eyes taking place in the channel. We couldn't possibly comment about a load of stuff, whether or not people were sceptical about a vaccine, for example. Everyone's entitled to their view on these kind of things. We wouldn't have that. It would all have to be happy, clappy rainbows, wouldn't it?
Yeah, in a way. And you know, I think the biggest harm about that is that dialogue would completely be shut down. I think in a lot of ways, if you want to improve people's views and if you want to improve your society in any direction, it doesn't matter where you come from, the left, the right, the center. The point is that the way in which you can go forward is if you have a dialogue, if you can have discussions, and if you can have debate about opinions. And shutting down things on the grounds that they might be offensive to someone is basically preventing such debates.
But are we too soft? I mean, it appears there's been a bit of pushback on this from the Conservative Party. From what I can gather, Labour think that we're not doing enough to do things like protect children. I'll just put this out there again. Is it not the responsibility of parents to check what their children are looking at online? Why does the government have to come in and protect children more than it already does? We already have laws against various things.
I think definitely, you know, at least until the age of 18, parents are by and large in charge of their children. But I also want to say that the current online safety bill is also instituting a lot of different policies that will be protecting the children as well. The tech firms now have to publish all the dangers and risks that their social media platforms pose for the children. They also now have to enforce the age limit. They have to publicly announce whenever the Ofcom takes any action against them. Self-harm encouragement is also prohibited. So the online safety bill is addressing this issue. It's not just letting children be exposed to any content.
And what really winds me up is you mentioned the Taylor Swift thing there. She was trying to make a particular point about, you know, I suppose the way that the public perceptions about female weight can negatively impact women's mental health. And that is a perfectly valid point and something that needs to be addressed. But then why delete it when you get a little bit of pushback? This is what winds me up. You end up with people online go, I was deeply offended by this. And, OK, in the case of Taylor Swift, I imagine because she's got such a large audience, that was probably quite a lot of people. But very often, companies maybe get 1 or 2 complaints from someone on Twitter, and before you know it, they've biffed an entire advertising campaign. Do you think that people are too soft these days, and actually a little bit of offence never hurt anyone?
I think, you know, I think in a way people are definitely a bit too soft, because I think ultimately, I'm not saying that you should never remove any content in the face of criticism. Sometimes the criticism might be justified and correct. But if you post something and you believe in it and you had a reason as to why you've decided to share certain kind of content, you know, Taylor Swift sharing how she feels about her physical appearance, then stand behind it. You've had your own reason.
Back it.
Respond to the backlash.
Yeah, 100%. Otherwise, you're just soft. Thank you very, very much. Great to have you on the show. There's Helena Ivanov there, who is a researcher at the Henry Jackson Society, reacting to a big victory for freedom of speech. I can't get it. You know, the kind of parents there that, like, let their kids all run around a restaurant and then can't work out why on earth someone complains about the fact that they're being unruly. It's these kind of parents that let their kids go on Twitter, right, and see some absolute filth on there or on social media or on various other sites and then complain that it's the media companies or the online companies who aren't doing enough to protect their children. It's like tossing them 10 quid and going play on the motorway and then being surprised when they get by a car, isn't it? Anyway, you're with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News. Coming up, Britain's oil exploration companies are warning that the government's new windfall tax poses an existential threat to their industry. And we'll get stuck into a debate. Finally, for the first time, the number of people in England and Wales identifying as Christian has fallen below 50%, as the number of people saying they don't have a faith jumps to third. There's been a significant rise in Buddhism as well, believe it or not. Anyway, we will debate whether Christianity still plays an important role in the UK, or crucially, are we still a Christian country? We'll have all of that coming your way very, very shortly. But now, though, it's your headlines.
Thank you, Patrick. It's 4:32. I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB newsroom. A man has been arrested in Gloucestershire in connection with the deaths of at least 27 people who drowned in the English Channel in a dinghy last year. 32-year-old Haram Ahmed Abu Bakr is accused of being a member of a gang behind the crossing. 2 people survived while 4 are still missing. He's due to appear at Westminster's Magistrates Court tomorrow. An error at a lab which saw thousands of positive COVID cases reported as negative could have led to the deaths of 20 people. Investigators at the UK Health Security Agency say the mistake at the Wolverhampton lab meant nearly 40,000 PCR tests were reported as negative when they were positive between September and October last year. It's thought the error led to around 55,000 additional infections. Bosses at the UK HSA say they fully accept the findings and recommendations made in the report. The government has given the go-ahead to build the Sizewell C nuclear power plant and committed £700 million to the scheme. The plant, which is being developed by French energy giant EDF, will be built in Suffolk. Ministers say the move will create 10,000 highly skilled jobs and provide reliable low-carbon power to the equivalent of 6 million homes for more than 50 years. And China's ambassador to the UK has been summoned to the Foreign Office over a diplomatic row following the arrest and alleged beating of a BBC journalist covering COVID protests. A heavy police presence has been reported in several cities in China to deter further protests after unrest over the weekend. Earlier today, the Foreign Office Minister answered an urgent question on the matter. He says the UK government is demanding a full and thorough explanation over the arrest of Ed Lawrence. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Patrick.
Welcome back. Now, earlier we heard how nuclear could be the answer to the UK's energy security. It's almost like people were clamouring for this years ago and we should have acted on it. But over in the North Sea, Britain's oil exploration companies are warning that the government's new energy profits levy, which taxes them at 75%, poses an existential threat to the UK's oil and gas industry. Who better than GB News' economics and business editor, Liam Halligan, who joins me in the studio now to break all of this down with On the Money. Yes, Liam Halligan, fantastic stuff. So you've been speaking to the boss of Tailwind Energy, I believe, a big North Sea exploration company. What's going on?
I have. So Tailwind, actually, they're a sort of small, medium-sized company because what's happening in the North Sea, as it's got harder to extract oil and gas from the North Sea, a lot of the really big energy companies, the Shells and the BPs, they do less than they used to. So about 60 or 70% of what we get from the North Sea now is reliant on these small British-based companies where most of what they do is in the North Sea. They're not the global guys. And they're all brought together in a trade association called Brindex, the Association of British Independent Oil Exploration Companies. Now, bear with me. Back in the spring of this year, before the war in Ukraine really got going, oil and gas companies, they were taxed at 40% on their profits. So that's much higher than regular companies, which are taxed at corporation tax, which is 19%. Rishi Sunak increased that to 65% in May, and Jeremy Hunt in the autumn statement has increased that again to 75%.
Right.
And this organisation, Brindex, it's saying, look, this is just going to mean that a lot of these small and medium-sized exploration companies, oil and gas extracting companies in the North Sea, they just won't be able to operate if the government's taking 75% of what they make because a lot of what they make goes paying their debts and so on, because they're small, not massive multilateral companies. And so they wrote a letter to the Chancellor over the weekend, which I've got hold of, and I can show some of it to you here up on the screen. Brindex, these small oil and gas companies, they say the latest rise is 75%. That is that existential threat to the industry, and with it, those jobs in our nation's energy security. UK upstream companies, that's the exploration companies, can no longer shoulder this extreme, open-ended tax burden. Strong words. They went on to warn, if the government continues down this path of the current anticipated 75% rate, further investment in the UK has become unviable, and so begins a rapid onset of the decline of the North Sea. Now, this is serious stuff, because the reason the government wants more oil and gas from the North Sea, of course, is to enhance our energy security, given what's happening in terms of Russia and Ukraine. And earlier today, I spoke to Jacques Thomé. He is, as you say, from Tailwind Energy. This is one of these small oil and gas companies. In this interview, he's speaking for Brindex, that trade association bringing together the small oil and gas explorers. And this is what he said.
Really here today to talk about what is an HMT-inflicted complete collapse of the North Sea. There will be capital flight, and the timing of this is very poor given how strategic the North Sea is right now in the face of war with Russia and runaway inflations. This finance bill will increase energy costs to consumers. It will actually lower revenues over time for the HMT, because they are on the hook for 20 billion pounds of decommissioning, and that will accelerate as fields get decommissioned earlier.
Tomei, he mentioned their HMT, that's industry largo for Her Majesty's Treasury. What he's saying is that this 75% profit tax will kill off a lot of companies. Those companies will then have all their kit in the ground in the middle of the North Sea. The state is partly responsible for decommissioning that kit under the terms of the contracts. So the Treasury is going to lose out twice. It's not going to get money from these companies because they'll be gone, according to the industry body. And then the Treasury will have to pay for the decommissioning costs. So if Jeremy Hunt is looking to raise money, then he's barking up the wrong tree, so to speak. And Jacques Thomé also told me, he said, it's not that the small oil and gas operators object particularly to 75% for now. Yeah, these are tough times. These companies say that they need to be seen to be pay their way. But what he's saying is that if you charge 75% on their entire profits, that's going to wipe them out. So why not charge them 75% above a certain level? So above profits that they make when the oil price, for instance, goes above $75 a barrel. Here he is again.
Capital will leave the country. And with that, a lot of jobs, infrastructure, and most importantly, energy security and bills will suffer. So what we're saying is create a very simple amendment with a price floor that will protect capital, protect jobs and energy security. And then above that level, we're happy to pay 75%. And the revenue will actually make more money over time, because we will continue to reinvest and keep oil production up, which is what they need for their Treasury budget.
Yeah, Liam, to be honest with you, it winds me up, a lot of this stuff, because fundamentally I think most people just want a really warm home and they don't want to have to pay through the nose for it. I get that it might seem unpalatable that in these difficult times there are some companies making huge, huge profits, but they didn't invade Ukraine, did they? And I just don't see... is this just a ridiculous... Like, the left have won. Like, we don't like rich people. Here's a load of rich people. Let's clobber them with tax. Well, then they just do one and we don't have anything.
These small and medium-sized companies, they're not making particularly large profits at the moment. Patrick, the oil price is not historically very high at the moment. They're companies that only operate in the North Sea, that's got some of the highest extraction costs in the world. As this taxation goes up on them, they're going to find it very hard, they say, to repay their debts, which is why some of them may ultimately topple over. Look, this is a live issue. Thanks for sticking with me. I know it's a bit complex, but often the story is in the complexity. This is going to be debated in the House of Commons tomorrow as part of the government's finance bill, the legislation that implements the autumn statement. And I'd expect a lot of people in the House of Commons to be concerned about the complete demise of the North Sea oil industry. It's a great source of jobs for an awful lot of skilled and semi-skilled people, good, well-paid jobs that allow families to get money together, deposit on a house,
Exactly
all of
that. But also, as well, one of the things that, I mean, you are right to point out that I don't normally do complex too well. I like to drag things into the gutter, and that's the way I do news, crash, bang, wallop. However, with something like this, one of the main reasons why I like to stick with it is because it just seems like complete and utter political lunacy that's self-defeating. It might sound good to the likes of a Greta Thunberg, but thank goodness that Swedish teenager is not running our country. Anyway, thank you very much. Liam Halligan there, our economics and business editor, bringing you up to date with a story that, yes, whilst complex, does affect you, and that's why we like to do it. Anyway, coming up, a fiery debate, not before time. Is Britain still a Christian country? First, we had a vicar saying that Jesus was transgender, and now it's emerged that Christianity is in decline. Shock horror. If you lose your values, you lose your people. How do you feel about Britain's changing demographics? I will be back in a tick.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something good happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
And it's about standards and public life. No, I'll tell you what's hypocrisy, Narinda.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin.
We believe in the UK.
No bias, no censorship.
It just doesn't make sense to me. He wasn't doing his job as Chancellor.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
OK, wonderful people. I don't know about you, but I think we need to liven things up a bit, don't we? Now, according to the 2021 census, the proportion of people in England and Wales identifying as Christian has now fallen below 50% for the first time. And in a fifth of households surveyed, all members of that household said they had no religion. The Archbishop of York, Stephen Cottrell, has reacted to the data, saying, "We've left behind the era when many people almost automatically identified as Christian." Yes, some people would argue that Christians don't really identify as Christian anymore, with comments about Jesus being transgender and all of this stuff. So, does Christianity still play an important role in the UK? Are we still a Christian country? And loads of you have been emailing in about this, gbviews@gbnews.uk. I'm hoping that we might have some of those emails shortly. But with me now is Gavin Ashenden, former chaplain to Queen Elizabeth II, and Andrew Copson, CEO of Humanists UK. Great stuff. I will start with you, Gavin. Gavin, are we still a Christian country?
No, not at all. Absolutely not. In fact, the numbers are much worse than you say. You talked about people who identify as Christians, but actually we should really be talking about people who practice as Christians, and they're much lower. This isn't a great surprise because this is in line with Europe. It's not just about England or the UK. Europe and America have been giving way to a secular philosophy. I'd rather not talk about religion and secularity. I think everyone has a worldview. And the church has lost its influence, partly because the media has been resolutely anti-Christian and partly because the church hasn't lived up to its own ideals. But the church has been here before. It converted the whole of Europe from paganism in the 5th, 6th and 7th century. We've just got to do it again. We've done it before. We know what to do. It's just a matter of people practicing.
OK, I'll definitely come back to you on a few of the things that you said there, but Andrew, I'll lob it your way for a second. Andrew Copson, CEO of Humanist UK. One of the startling things for me about all of this is that 37.2% said they had no religion, this is in England and Wales, up from 25.2% back in 2011. Now, this is a concern, as far as I'm concerned, because some would argue that religion can impose good morals on people. Have we just got a load of lawless pagans rampaging across England and Wales? What's going on?
Well, I don't want you to worry, because it's certainly true that some religious people have got good morals, and they may even think they get their good morals from religion. But plenty of non-religious people have got good morals too, and there really is no correlation, at least in the West and in the free world, between religion and morality as such. And we've got plenty of evidence from social experiments to show that that's the case. So don't be worried about that. I mean, I agree rather with everything that's just been said. There's been an effective collapse in religious belief and religious belonging, and now we see the long shadow of that in the census data, which measure cultural identity. That's fallen away too for religion, and no religion has surged ahead. It's not quite true to say that we're in common with everything that's happening over Europe and America, because the UK and England and Wales in particular, and Wales in particular even more so, where the non-religious now outnumber Christians, are far ahead, as I would see it, in the race, ahead of the game and surging much faster than others. But yeah, that's certainly true.
Yeah, and I'll throw it back again your way, Gavin Ashenden, who's former chaplain to Queen Elizabeth II. Can I just make a point, shock horror, that some people might find slightly controversial? Gavin, are Christians a little bit more timid when it comes to their belief than, dare I say, it's other religions, which maybe makes it more susceptible? So, for example, we've had stand-up comedians who have based entire world stand-up tours on atheism. We've had various different shows on television about atheism, and some would argue slagging off Christianity. You simply can't do that about some other religions, can you? Is Christianity an easy target?
Oh, well, yes, it's a very easy target, and there's always been a delicate balance in Christianity between being a muppet and turning the other cheek. And very often people can't tell the difference. So I'm afraid we have lots of muppets at the moment, not many turning the other cheek. But I don't want to speak for other people. I was a secularist for much of my life, and then I discovered that everything that Jesus taught was true, and it changed my life, and I've been talking about it ever since. And lots of people have become Christians in my life, and it's all. And although Andrew's right, of course Christians don't have a monopoly on morals. That would be dreadful, and indeed many of them behave very badly. But the difference is I think we shouldn't be talking about morals. We should talk about forgiveness, because one of the real problems in society is people not forgiving each other, having vendettas and vengeance and falling out forever. It ruins families. It sets up racism and kinds of classism. Christians have a solution to that nobody else has. Because they're forgiven and they're called to forgive without limit, there's a capacity for healing relationships that other philosophies don't have. Other philosophies range from ignoring each other to bombing the hell out of each other. Christianity is unique and really rather precious.
Andrew, come back to that.
Well, it's not my personal experience. I mean, I've known Christians who have been some of the most unforgiving people I've ever met. And I've
Give me some context. Give me some context, Andrew.
Well, or non-religious people who've been amongst the most forgiving. I mean, my grandmother was the most forgiving person I ever knew, and she was a lifelong atheist and humanist. So, I mean, we can only speak about these things from our personal experience, of course. And my experience is different from my friend there. So I think that forgiveness is important. It's not, of course, the only thing that's important. I mean, dare I say that if you have a non-religious view where you're able to synthesize different points of view, look at different cultures, look at different traditions, look at different sources of morality, different values, different beliefs, you might be able to take a broader view and say, there's more than one important value in the world. Forgiveness is important, but justice has its place. Charity is important, but self-interest has its place. Social solidarity is important. I mean, lots of things are important. I think for me, one of the things that the big change in the value shift that we've gone through from religion to non-religion is partly that, is recognizing there's a much bigger context and life is much more complicated than it seemed to people 2,000 years ago.
Yes, and I think, Gavin, one of the things for me is there is a fine line in modern society between traditional religion and religious values. I mean, the gay marriage thing raises its head all the time, and also, as well, the idea... I mean, I've read a ridiculous article about the idea that Jesus might have been transgender. I mean, you can be pro-trans and maybe agree that Jesus probably was not transgender. But if Christianity itself is not even sticking to its own, I suppose, doctrine, really, how can it expect anybody else to do it? I mean, some other religions, for example, Islam, resolutely and unashamedly sticks to its doctrine, and that seems to be on the rise.
I think it was Chesterton who said the problem with Christianity isn't that it's been tried and found wanting, it's been tried and found too difficult. Because although, as Andrew said, he knows lots of forgiving humanists, and of course he does. Humanists are wonderful people. If a Christian doesn't forgive, you can say you're failing in your aspirations. You need to change. If a humanist doesn't forgive, you can say, well, it's your choice. You can do what you like. So it's not so matter of comparing people with people as comparing one way of life with another. I still think that one of the most impressive things about Christianity is that all Christians are under a duty to forgive without limit, and that kind of behaviour changes the way society works.
Gavin, thank you very much. I've just got time very, very quickly to throw back to Andrew for the final word. Can I just put something to you, Andrew? Now, I am Christian, OK? I'm also not necessarily a particularly great person, so I want to qualify it with that. I cling on to resentments in a little knapsack and store them up, and then I have a smash room at home where I let them out. But anyway, however, my belief in a final judgment day, i.e. a heaven and a hell, right? Well, let's be honest, I think we all know which way I'm going to end up going. But a heaven and a hell stops me from being an absolute tyrannical dictator. And is there a concern? Is there a concern that if we do turn into a godless, atheist society, if people think this is it and we don't have to get judged one day, you will end up seeing an increase in people just living for today, i.e. looting and murdering?
Well, there may be a very small minority of very genuinely bad people like you, who the only thing that restrains them is, fear of punishment afterwards. But most people do good because they want to do good. They want to have good done by them, and so they treat others well. They live in society and they recognise that if you want to have a successful life in society, then you have to have rules that govern our behaviour together. So although there might be some people unusually who have to be constrained by fear of punishment or promise of reward from doing the things they secretly want to do, I think most people are much better than that.
Yes, I should probably at this point qualify. I have no desire to loot and or murder, but there we go. Thank you very much. But that might change if I found out that God didn't exist. Anyway, right, thank you very much, both of you. As Gavin Ashenden, their former chaplain to Queen Elizabeth II, and Andrew Copson, CEO of Humanists UK. What do you make of that? The figures, really, I'll just quickly whiz you through. 37.2% of people in England and Wales said they had no religion. That's up from 25.2%. Shockingly, it's also emerged as well not shockingly, is it, actually? I don't know why I said that. Those identifying as Muslim, 4.9% to 6.5%, an increase, and Hindu as well, 1.5% to 1.7%. Polish remains the most common non-UK identity. Romanian second. Indian remains third. The Irish, it's bad news for the Irish. They've dropped into fourth. And an increase in multi-ethnic households from 8.7% to 10.1%. Do you or do you not think England and Wales are Christian countries? Lots of you have been getting in touch with your views. We do have time for just a very quick one of them. So whether or not you think the UK is still a Christian country, Natalie says, I would be in the 46%. As a Christian in this country, I'm deeply patriotic, but sadly no longer feel we are a Christian nation. Sadly, religion has put people off, I fear. Jack, final one, says there are still Christians in this country, but no longer a majority and becoming less and less Christian. How sad. At least religion taught people how to behave and have morals and think of others. Now no one cares. I just think that Christianity almost is killing itself in a way. Very, very soft, and I think very, very quiet about its own desires, and in some cases I think eating itself alive by fundamentally going against its own moral compass. But there we go. You are with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News. Lots more to come in the next hour. We're just over 2 hours away now from a Battle of Britain as the Three Lions take on the Welsh Dragons in the World Cup. I will be speaking to a former Welsh superstar attacker. That's right, attacker, striker. Let's be honest. Anyway, are changes to the online safety bill a win for free speech? And more on those shocking stats which suggest that less than half of Brits are indeed Christians. But before that, we've got your weather.
Hello, I'm Ada McGibbon from the Met Office. If you're lucky, you've got blue skies and sunshine this afternoon. Western areas, northern Scotland, but for many other areas, it's widespread low cloud, mist and some stubborn fog patches persisting through the day. At the moment, weather systems are approaching from the west, but they're slowing down. They're coming up against high pressure, which is holding firm. And that's why we've got light winds, dry weather across the UK, apart from 1 or 2 showers in the far southeast, and this extensive area of low cloud, mist and fog. Now, the bright white areas are where we've got fog, southern and central Scotland, parts of northern and central England and Wales. Hill fog predominantly, but some mistiness at lower levels. Some fog patches further west and north as well under clearing skies overnight. And it's here where we're likely to see a touch of frost come dawn. But for most, it's 3 or 4 Celsius and another gloomy start with some poor visibility on the roads during Wednesday morning. And again, it's going to take some time for that low cloud, mist and fog to lift in some spots. The fog will persist through the day, for example, North York Moors across the Grampians into the southern uplands. But for, again, northern areas, western areas, and in the south, we'll see brighter skies, a freshening breeze, 12 Celsius in Devon and Cornwall. That's as high as the temperatures will get. For many, it's mid to high single figures. And for Northern Ireland, it clouds over with some rain arriving later on, that rain pushing into western Scotland by evening. It's light, it's on and off, and it will be accompanied by a freshening breeze, but it will keep the fog away on Thursday morning. Elsewhere across the UK, it is extensive low cloud mist and fog once again. Some very dense fog patches and widespread across central and southern parts of England, so it could be tricky first thing on the roads once more. And that fog will take some time through Thursday to clear. The sun, of course, is weak at this time of year. So another misty, murky day on Thursday for many. Friday brings a freshening breeze from the east, so it's going to be brighter, but also turn a bit colder.
We are GB News right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12, on TV, on radio and online.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Hey, welcome back everybody. It's 5 o'clock. This is me, Patrick Christys on GB News. Coming up, we are less than 2 hours away from the Battle of Britain as England take on Wales at the World Cup. Earlier, we spoke to former England manager Sam Allardyce, who said that his England team look more united than those of old.
They do seem to pull it all together and all push and pull in the same direction. So the backroom staff supporting them hopefully will be an energised performance tonight and a victory.
Gosh, do you remember the glory days of Sam Allardyce? Anyway, Big Sam is up for it, but are you? We'll cross live to Qatar and hear from fans ahead of the big game. Also this hour, Does Christianity still have a role to play in the UK? Interesting now as well, though, isn't it, to note that London, Manchester and Birmingham are now all minority white cities. So in those cities, being white means, I suppose, you are an ethnic minority. How do you feel about that? Former chaplain to Queen Elizabeth II, Gavin Ashenden, thinks as though Christianity still has a role to play in this country, but also the number of practicing Christians could be in decline.
Should really be talking about people who practice as Christians, and they're much lower. This isn't a great surprise because this is in line with Europe. It's not just about England or the UK.
You get a lot of reactions to that, layers to those new ONS figures, layers to them, not just about the fact that there are, of course, now minority white cities in the UK, but also the plummeting popularity of Christianity. Are we a Christian country? We'll discuss all of that. The number of people identifying as Christian in England and Wales drops below 50%. I think we could all see that coming a mile off, couldn't we? And law enforcement agencies in multiple countries have smashed one of Europe's biggest drugs gangs, responsible for controlling more than a third of the cocaine trade across the continent.
Majority of the production is in South America, Colombia, Peru, and the routing from there en masse comes mainly through container ship.
Quite literally a massive blow, isn't it? Our Home and Security Editor Mark White will have the latest. Let me know what you think. A couple of big ones for you today. I want to know whether or not you think Britain is still a Christian country and whether or not the demographic change actually bothers you, as it's emerged now that London, Manchester and Birmingham are all minority white cities. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Your views. But before that, it's your latest headlines.
Good afternoon, it's 2 minutes past 5. I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB newsroom. A man has been arrested in Gloucestershire in connection with the deaths of at least 27 people who drowned in the English Channel in a dinghy last year. 32-year-old Haram Ahmed Abu Bakr is accused of being a member of a gang behind the crossing. 2 people survived while 4 are still missing. He's due to appear at Westminster's Magistrates Court tomorrow. An error at a lab which saw thousands of positive COVID cases reported as negative could have led to the deaths of 20 people. Investigators at the UK Health Security Agency say the mistake at the Wolverhampton lab meant nearly 40,000 PCR tests were wrongly reported as negative between September and October last year. Researchers also estimated almost 700 additional hospital admissions that may not otherwise have occurred. Bosses at the UK HSA say they fully accept the findings and recommendations made in the report. Ukraine's First Lady has urged MPs to help her country achieve justice. Speaking in Westminster, Olena Zelenska spoke of the suffering of Ukrainian civilians, saying many living on the front line have been without water, electricity and heat. She also highlighted ongoing torture and systematic violence committed by Russian soldiers, including rape. President Zelensky's wife likened Russia's war in Ukraine to the Second World War.
Are now going through the terror, which will resonate with you. Your island survived the air raids, which were identical to those that Russia uses now to put us on our knees. We're hearing sirens every day, identical to those which were heard by the British generations. You did not surrender, and we will not surrender. But victory is not the only thing we need. We need justice.
The government has given the go-ahead to build the Sizewell C nuclear power plant and committed £700 million to the scheme. The plant, which is being developed by French energy giant EDF, will be built in Suffolk. Ministers say the move will create 10,000 highly skilled jobs and provide reliable low-carbon power to the equivalent of 6 million homes for more than 50 years. China's ambassador to the UK has been summoned to the Foreign Office over a diplomatic row following the arrest and alleged beating of a British journalist covering COVID protests. A heavy police presence has been reported in several cities in China to deter further protests after unrest over the weekend. Answering an urgent question on the matter, the Foreign Office Minister David Rutley says the UK government will continue to protect British values.
More broadly, we recognise that China poses a systemic challenge to our values and interests, as highlighted again by the Prime Minister yesterday, a challenge that grows more acute as it moves towards greater authoritarianism. That's why we're taking robust action to protect our interests, to stand up for our values. That includes imposing sanctions, leading action at the UN, and strengthening our supply chain resilience. Let me assure members that as part of our frank relationship with China, we will continue to raise our human rights concerns at the highest levels.
A section of the new online safety bill has been removed following criticism by some Conservatives that it posed a risk to free speech. The amendment means big tech like social media sites will no longer be required to remove harmful material if it's deemed to be legal. The online safety bill is due to return to Parliament next week after being repeatedly delayed. The Foreign Secretary is accusing Russia's President Putin of trying to freeze the Ukrainians into submission. Speaking at a meeting of NATO's foreign ministers in Bucharest, James Cleverly said Russia's war was destined to fail due to the resilience of the Ukrainian people. Ministers at the talks are looking for ways to support Kyiv's military and keep civilians safe despite constant blackouts and heating shortages. James Cleverly says the UK will do everything it can to help Ukraine.
Targeting of civilian infrastructure, of energy infrastructure, is obviously designed to try and freeze the Ukrainians into submission. I don't think it will be successful. In fact, I know it won't be successful because they've shown a huge amount of resilience, and we will continue to support them through these difficult months.
And the King says he wants a good game of football tonight as England and Wales go head-to-head in the final match of Group B in the World Cup. To get through to the knockouts, Wales must beat England and hope the USA draw with Iran. Meanwhile, Gareth Southgate's side are looking to bounce back from their draw with the US and qualify as top of the group. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now, Patrick, it is back to you.
Yes, well, oh gosh, in just under 2 hours' time, England and Wales will kick off in what's being dubbed the Battle of Britain at the World Cup. It's a crucial game for both teams. Oh, we can see the atmosphere building there. We're at a Qatari stadium. The England flag, St George's flag there. A little bit of the Welsh as well. Look at that. The atmosphere will be building as the English and the Welsh pile in to that particular stadium ahead of their clash this evening. It's due to kick off at 7 p.m. our time. If you're watching on TV, you'll be able to see those live pictures of supporters arriving at the Ahmad bin Ali Stadium. It just rolls off the tongue, that, doesn't it, in Qatar? Joining me now is GB News' reporter Paul Hawkins, who has been diligently reporting for us in Doha. He's rarely moved from the souk the whole time he's been there, although amazingly managed to put no weight on whatsoever, which I would have done by now. Paul, thank you very much. The atmosphere must be building between the English and the Welsh.
Yeah, you're very kind of you, Patrick. There is a reason why I wear a black shirt. Yeah, listen, the atmosphere is building in the souk and outside and soon inside the Ahmed bin Ali Stadium. They've met 103 times, England and Wales, since 1879. This is easily the biggest moment of that rivalry because they've never faced each other at a World Cup. It's going to be huge. England are favourites, but don't write off the Welsh. They've got the players that can make a difference. If England have another off day, like they did against the USA, and Aaron Ramsey and Gareth Bale turn up for Wales, which they didn't against Iran, then it's going to be a really good match, and Wales could well pip England. And remember, if Wales win, even by one goal, and it finishes as a draw in the Iran-USA game, then Wales will go through with England. If Wales win by more than 3 goals, then it doesn't matter what happens in the other games. So the permutations are relatively simple. In terms of how the build-up here has been going, Wales fans have been in the souk, if they want to stay sober. If they want to have a drink, though, they can get involved in one of those Welsh pre-match packages, a lot of them being sold at a lot of the hotels across Doha, including the Intercontinental. They've taken over the first floor of the hotel there, and this is why fans are celebrating there, at least looking ahead to the game like this. Look at that. There you go. Look at that. There you go. It's like the Welsh David Brent. Let's have a chat with Yvonne as well. Thank you for that. Yvonne, how are you feeling? And not about that. Well, actually, about that dancing.
Well, he is 60, so I suppose we can't expect anything.
Is he really? Is it good?
Yes, I know.
Is it good? How are you feeling about the drinking here in Doha? You've got to be quite strategic, haven't you? Because you can't just have one.
Well, 5 tokens, so you share. I have 2 tokens. My husband has 3, so he has more pints than me. But don't worry, don't worry.
So that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about the game, guys?
Oh, I've got pilly palace butterflies in my tummy at the moment.
Yeah. Feeling confident?
Yes.
Yeah. You're not feeling quite as confident.
Not as confident, but you never know. As the pints are going down, we get more confident.
We know what Iceland did to them in the Euros, so we can do it. You know, Iceland are smaller than us. We can do it.
So the Wales fans are feeling confident. Gareth Southgate, though, he's well aware, the England manager, of the threat that Wales pose, given the rivalry between the two countries.
It's like any two countries whose borders are next to each other. There's a competitive rivalry. For me, it's a great sporting rivalry. We've got to focus on performance. We've got to play well. You know, we've got to bring our quality to the table and give that the best opportunity we have of making the difference on the pitch.
Yes, there we go. Look, Paul, this is fantastic stuff. I must say, I've got to pick up on the Welsh David Brent that we saw there. I thought that was fantastic. And I think we can all agree, Paul, it's nice that us Brits bring a bit of culture with us, no matter where we go in the world.
Yeah, if you can call rubbish dancing a bit of our culture, we'll have that. Hey, it was entertaining, wasn't it? So I'll try and wrap up here because I can see a rapidly approaching Saudi fan train coming down the souk. But basically, England, Wales, Iran and USA, any of those 4 can qualify. Don't write off Iran and the USA. That's going to be a match to watch out for, especially after the Americans tweeted a picture of the Iranian flag without the Islamic emblem, and they then had to apologise for that. So, listen, Wales taking on England later. That one kicks off at 10 o'clock. By the way, we know the teams, and there's the Saudi fan train, I should say, led by Tunisia. So there's Tunisia are leading it, and then there's some Saudis passing by as well. But listen, we do know, just very quickly before I let you go, we do know which teams, England or Wales, will face in the next round, because it's finished Senegal 2, Ecuador 1, and the Netherlands beat Qatar 2-0. So that means Netherlands finished top of their group, Senegal finished second. Whoever finishes top in England's group, so probably England, would play Senegal in the next round at the weekend, and if Wales can finish second, then they will face the Netherlands. So we could be paired with England, Senegal, and the Netherlands against Wales on Saturday, potentially.
Fantastic. Good stuff, Paul. Great. That Paul Hawkins there, GB News reporter, live from the souk. I mean, the words, there's a Saudi fan train approaching, is enough to strike fear into the hearts of any man, but Paul dealt with that rather well, I think. So there you go. England versus Wales kicks off in just a couple of hours' time, just under a couple of hours' time. And fans, not just those in Qatar who decided they want to spend 80 quid on beer, some people are doing it a lot more locally. And Sophie Reaper is there, our GB News North West reporter, joining us from Manchester. There you are, Sophie. And you are, well, you're in a fan zone, are you? It looks like it's gearing up.
I am indeed, Patrick. We're at the Road to Victory in Manchester. Now, as you say, it is starting to fill up. Obviously, it's still early on. We've got nearly 2 hours before kick-off, but people are slowly but surely starting to filter in. By kick-off, we're expecting around 5,000 or 6,000 fans in here. And joining me now is just one of those fans, Daniela. Daniela, what are you expecting from tonight's match?
Well, I'm really hoping for a win. Me and my partner and all of our friends have been watching the past few games, and we're really hoping tonight that England win and then we get through to the round of 16.
Now, the game against the USA was a little bit of a disappointment. What are you hoping for from tonight's team?
Well, I've been told to say this, Foden. My boyfriend said he needs to be on there, he needs to be part of the team. So, yeah, hopefully we see Foden on there tonight and then we get the win.
I'm guessing from that your boyfriend's a Man City fan, so I'm guessing he's hoping for Grealish maybe as well then?
Yes, I mean, everybody loves Grealish, don't they? So, yeah, hopefully Grealish makes an appearance as well.
Now, of course, as long as we don't lose by more than 4 goals tonight, we are going through to the final round of 16. How far do you think England can go in this tournament? You think we might win?
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, everybody'd love that, to get to the final and get the win, and then maybe another bank holiday. Who knows?
Fab, thank you so much for your time this evening, Daniela, and I hope the atmosphere picks up. I know that by the end of before kick-off, we're going to see a lot of people here. I was here at the Road to Victory on Friday, and I can tell you, I can promise you that the atmosphere is going to be absolutely electric.
Yeah, it's going to pop off. Look, thank you very much, Sophie. Sophie Reaper there. Also, I believe that lady was called Daniela Mancini, which is, of course, the surname, anyway, of a rather famous Manchester City manager. She wanted Phil Foden to be playing. I mean, this is it. Very shortly, I'm going to be interviewing Clayton Blackmore, of course, famous Welsh footballer, to get his view, his hot take on whether or not he thinks the Welsh can beat the English. But bit of breaking news for you. Breaking news. Talks between the RMT and the government have broken down, with the union accusing the government of a lack of urgency over dealing with the dispute. Mick Lynch, the General Secretary of the RMT, made the statement ahead of further meetings with Transport Secretary Grant Shapps on Friday, with the Minister stating that his role is to facilitate and support a deal rather than get involved in negotiations. Joining me on the show shortly is Clayton Blackmore. Let's just pick that apart again. Keep that breaking news strap on there. So, that's breaking news now. So Mick Lynch is saying that the General Secretary of the RMT himself made the statement ahead of further meetings with Transport Secretary Grant Shapps on Friday. He says that his role is to facilitate and support a deal rather than get involved in negotiations. Right, there we go. Well, that's an interesting one to pick apart. So rather predictably, the RMT's talks have broken down. Right, OK, well, that's a bit of breaking for you there. We'll keep you up to date on that as and when the show progresses. And, yes, I'm going to go into the terrifying world of my inbox now. GBViews at gbnews.uk. I have been asking you what you think about the latest ONS stats, and I want to read this to you before I get some of your views, actually. So, it's a census, right? We all know what a census is. Now, the headline takeaway from many news outlets, and as indeed it was something I was leading on before, was whether or not we're still a Christian country, because the number of people identifying as Christian in England and Wales has dropped below 50%, 50, for the first time ever. But actually, as people pick through the ONS report, more is starting to emerge. And London, Birmingham and Manchester are now non-white cities, so non-white majority, OK? Or you could say a white minority, basically, for the first time ever. So a share of population in London that is now white British, 37%, in Birmingham 43%, in Manchester 49%. That's a total net percentage point fall of 7%, 9% and 9% respectively. What do you make of that? Does it bother you? Does it not bother you? Why should it bother you? GBViews at gbnews.uk. The Christianity element of it, of course, is another one. Now, it's interesting to note, though, that, yes, OK, there has been a rise in, obviously, clearly, various different people from various different countries, bringing with them various different religious backgrounds as well. But the fall in the number of people claiming to be Christian is more to do with a rise in atheism than it is to do with anything else. And I was saying that I would go to the inbox, and I'm going to do that now. GBViews at gbnews.uk. I've been asking whether or not it's concerning for you that you think that Christianity is, I suppose, on the wane. And I've been asking whether or not you think we're still a Christian country. And Barry has been on. Barry says, well, as long as the monarch remains ahead of the Church of England, then technically England is a Christian country. And I suppose, that's just a matter of fact, isn't it, Barry? So, yes, thank you very much for that. GBViews at gbnews.uk. I believe I can be joined now by the wonderful Clayton Blackmore, who is a former Wales football player. Yes, Clayton, there we go. Good stuff. Now, Clayton, your lot take on the English. How do you see it going? Can I get a prediction from you straight off the traps, please, mate?
Straight off the track, I think it's going to be a draw. I thought it was going to be a draw from day one before it all kicked off. It won't be enough for us. Hopefully we can win. You know, in football, anything can happen. It's 11v11, and you never know. We've got the players to score goals, and you can beat anybody on the day.
I mean, Gareth Bale, of course, is always going to be a threat, even if he is parading around with that ridiculous top knot. But the English haven't really got firing, have they? I'm certainly raising serious question marks over Gareth Southgate and his not-so-magic waistcoat. I mean, where is Phil Foden and the likes of that? You've always got a chance if Gareth Southgate is refusing to play his best player.
Well, hopefully he does that, because he hasn't, like you say, he hasn't done it. In the first game, I mean, he did score 6 goals, so... But in the USA game, Foden's not been, for me, he's one of the best players England have got. They've got a humongous amount of talent. You should be in the final this year. And it's all down to Gareth. If he picks the right shape, I think he'll go all the way to the finals.
OK, so if the Welsh beat the English, what kind of scenes are we going to be expecting across Wales?
Themes?
What kind of scenes? What kind of reaction do you think we'll be getting?
Oh, it'd be carnage. I might have to drive over to Wales myself and join in.
Yeah,
at the moment I'm in Manchester, so yeah, I mean it's a big ask, you know. For me, like I say, I think England are the best team around, and you know, some of the kids who are in there, they've won the World Cup at under 17 and 19s level, so they're ready to win it. They should have done better in the last couple of events, really.
Yeah, Clayton, what does it mean to represent your country? I mean, Wales is more synonymous with rugby. You play that incredibly well, of course, but I mean, it's got a good footballing population as well. What does it really mean to put on your national team shirt, represent your team? You know, now these players are doing it on the biggest stage of all, and they have got a decent chance of progressing out of the group stage. It would be absolutely monumental for Wales, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think it's the pride in yourself, obviously playing for your country, and every Welsh person around the world. So, you know, you're representing everybody who's Welsh. And, you know, it's a massive honour. And, you know, we had fantastic times. We never got over the line. These lads have got over the line. Hopefully, I think they might have missed the boat the first couple of games. We went with the wrong system, playing three at the back, you know, and against USA. In the second half, we were the better team. We played better against USA than England did, you know, and then we changed it again for the next game against Iran, which was disappointing. You know, and sometimes I think it comes down to the manager's a defender himself. So, you know, a lot of people around him are defenders. And I just thought you've got to go and try and win it. You've got to win these games, not, you know, try and not lose the games.
No, 100%. And I'm just having a look at your record here. I've got, and correct me if I'm wrong, Clayton, Wales national team, 39 appearances, 1 goal. What was that feeling like with the ball at the back of the net?
It was okay because we were already 4-0 up, I think, at the time.
Right.
So it was great. It was at the Arms Park, so it was a great event. You know, just every time I pulled the shirt on for Wales, it was magnificent.
It must have been fantastic. Now, there's another shirt that you wore rather a lot, which is very close to my heart, and that is the shirt of Manchester United. Sorry to say that I think the club is in decline, and I actually had the dubious honour of breaking live on air that Cristiano Ronaldo had left the club, and with it, I think we lose a true great. But one great... Well, I'm going to get you on that, actually, first and foremost. Do you think it was the right decision to biff Ronaldo?
I think, you know, he showed he didn't... I watched the games last season, and we couldn't get the ball to him. And, you know, Ronaldo can only score goals if you make chances for him, and we weren't doing that. And, you know, he got fed up with the way he was being treated, and, you know, what's happened now. We've got to draw a line under it. He's got to get on with finishing his career at the top. All right. And, you know, we've got to get back to the top.
All right, very finally now, you know, you are the manager of Wales. I'm just promoting you. It's the manager of Wales, right? Yeah. And you're looking your lads in the eye there. You've got the English boys next door, all that top talent. England are massive favourites. The hopes of a nation rest on your shoulders. How do you get them up for the game? Come on.
Seriously? You don't need to get them up. I wouldn't have to get them up for the game. I can guarantee you that every Welshman and every Welsh person I've ever played with, they're always up for the game, whoever it is. It's England, they'll be up for it, I can guarantee you. Anything could happen tonight. Hopefully we get the right result and both of us go through.
Oh, well, yeah, maybe England could do you a bit of a favour. Clayton, thank you very much. As ever, Clayton Blackmore there, former Wales player, former Manchester United player as well. There we are. Right, OK. Well, inspiring stuff. Let's just make an earlier correction to a breaking news item that we've brought to you. Right, oh, fantastic. You love to see it. Right, talks between the TSSA union and rail operators over the long-running dispute about pay, jobs and pensions have broken down, the union said, not the RMT, as we had earlier said. So that's a breakdown in talks between the TSSA union and rail operators. Not the only breakdown in communication that appears to have taken place there. You are with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News. Coming up, the row over how the government plans to keep children safe online continues after more alterations to the online safety bill. Campaigners are accusing ministers of watering down the law. I think maybe it's a boon and a victory for free speech. And before 6 o'clock, we will discuss the census figures. Get a load of this, people. You've got the cities of Manchester, Birmingham and London now minority white. You also have a massive drop in the number of people identifying as Christian. Are we indeed a Christian country? Do you like the way Britain is going? GB Views at GB News. All of that coming your way and much, much more. I'll be back in a tick.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
I think I've seen probably quite enough of Matt Hancock to last me a lifetime.
I'll also be getting to know you better, travelling to find out what you think about the politicians who are fighting for your vote.
They've got to get this country back on track.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. only on GB News, on TV, radio and online.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Welcome back, everybody. Now, the online safety bill has been amended to remove measures that would have required social media giants to take down harmful posts. Critics have attacked the weaker measures as potentially harmful to young people online and warned that the damage done by abusive posts doesn't end on your 18th birthday. Yeah, OK, fair enough. It follows a lengthy battle over the bill and its measures over the past few years. But with me now to pick this apart is Sam Ashworth-Hayes, Spectator and Telegraph columnist. Thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. Now, this is proved very, very controversial because there's the possibility, isn't there, that if these laws were brought in to stop people being offended, that essentially the asphyxiating hand of the state could have trampled all over freedom of speech.
Yeah, exactly. So the laws as originally framed, we had this tremendous bust-up between Kemi Badenoch and Nadine Dorries, where Kemi was saying, look, it's not the government's place to prevent your feelings from being hurt. Yeah. Nadine Dorries was saying, well, which section of this bill does that? And Dorries, of course, being responsible for pushing the bill through, this was quite alarming because there was an explicit clause in it which basically said malicious communications which cause psychological harm will be sort of within scope for law, and platforms will be required to sort of restrict these. And this was all framed around whether or not your feelings were being hurt in this way. So the changes which were made are very positive in the sense that this is the clauses which were framed illegal but harmful clauses are no longer part of it. But there's also a bit of sleight of hand going on here, because we now have clauses which, well, we don't have the clauses yet. We have a press release telling us what the clauses might be, which says that platforms will now be required to very stringently impose their T's and C's.
I get all of this, but for me, there's a slightly bigger picture stuff. Yes, there's this online safety bill, and some of those questions are about, whether child safety, etc. But there is a bigger thing that I think more people maybe can relate to at home because it affects us all. It's this question of offence and whether or not we are a bit too soft as a society, and whether or not the state needs to be involved in protecting people from that. Is it not the job of parents to protect their children from what they may be seeing online? You can put safety features on phones, on laptops. Why should the state be able to say that? Because, I'm sorry, but the way that things are going, like in Canada, for example, I mean, if someone made a rather, close-to-the-bone joke, do they become a criminal?
Well, they already do in Britain. So this
God.
is exactly. We have the Communications Act 2003. So this is a problem that we have already. We are far too soft as a society, as you say, on these matters, and there is a sort of substitution going on whereby people now think it's the job of the state to basically parent for them. The state should be regulating all these companies and making sure the children can't access these things. It's like, well, actually, what are you as a parent doing giving your child unsupervised internet access in the first place is a fairly basic question, which I think we've sort of let slip into the background, and I'm not convinced that's actually a good thing for children.
No, I'm not at all. And I also think if you leave it into the hands of people to decide what's offensive and what isn't, then frankly the woke brigade take over. Because, you know, the idea now that you can't talk about what we can physically see going on in the Channel or in towns and cities right across the country, the idea that it's controversial in some ways to talk about things like grooming gangs, right? The idea that it's controversial to say that I think a man is a man and a woman is a woman, and all of this stuff, right? Well, if you leave the woke brigade in charge of it, then anyone who says that kind of thing runs the risk of having every single social media account cancelled and potentially with government backing.
So this is what's interesting about the suggested framework changes to the bill, because now they're saying, well, OK, but you have to enforce the terms and conditions which you lay out quite rigorously. And many of these platforms will still have in their terms and conditions things which will restrict your ability to say stuff like that. Maybe Twitter won't under Elon Musk, but the other ones still will. And so effectively, at the moment, there's still a certain amount of grace where you know, if there's ambiguity, they might say, well, actually, this is a contribution to a debate, this is worthwhile, we'll put it up. Whereas now, if their government's sitting there saying, if you aren't enforcing your terms and conditions properly, we'll come for you, then that nuance goes.
Do you think, like, some people have greater freedom of speech in this country than others? I mean, I remember, I recognise, I mean, there was big Albanian protests, for example, not once but twice in this country. We've also seen the likes of, you know, people outside of school in Batley in Yorkshire calling for a teacher's blood. I would imagine if I did that, I would get arrested. But then if you look around and you think, well, if someone like J.K. Rowling tweets that she thinks that someone born with a vagina is a woman and someone born with a penis is a man, that appears to be deeply controversial and they get cancelled. Is free speech OK for some and not for others, depending on what your views are, do you think?
So I think, Rowling hasn't been sort of kicked off any platforms.
No, she hasn't been kicked off.
No.
But...
and I think, but that in part is because Rowling has enough terrifying lawyers, I suspect, that she'd be able to
She can afford them, can't she?
She'd be able to afford them, and she'd be able to make a really big fuss if someone did that. I think that there is a point you're getting at here which is completely true, which is that the restrictions we have tend to be selectively imposed. They are more geared to what you might view as sort of left-wing norms of conversation than they are towards conservative norms, despite the Conservative Party nominally being in office for the last 12 years. And I think this is a real problem with this sort of online safety bill stuff, where you even if the Conservative Party puts it in the very best of intentions as it originally stood, it's basically a charter for the next Labour government to come along and say, well, we interpret it this way.
Chop it up. And that's where because for me as well, it just seems to be like, it's almost Orwellian. It's like Trudeau, you know, Justin Trudeau in Canada, who drapes himself in the rainbow flag. I'm this big liberal. Well, introduced some of the most dictatorial and tyrannical rules and laws that you could imagine over the coronavirus, including stripping people of their incomes and livelihoods if they disagree with him, declaring a state of emergency because a bunch of people in trucks were driving somewhere near Ottawa, mostly, so as far as I could see, to play ice hockey in the street with their kids. And that was enough for him to be airlifted out of there and slap a whole state into lockdown. But look, thank you very, very much. Great to have you on the show as ever, and keep up the good work. Sam Ashworth-Hayes, spectator and Telegraph columnist. You are with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News. Next up, the decline of Christianity. For the first time, more than half of people asked in England and Wales said that they didn't describe themselves as Christian. But more than that, people, more than that. Now, for the very first time in British history, the cities of London, Birmingham and Manchester are minority white. Your views on all of that, GBviews at gbnews.uk. But first, it is your latest headlines.
This is the latest from the GB newsroom. A man has been arrested in Gloucestershire in connection with the deaths of at least 27 people who drowned in the English Channel in a dinghy last year. 32-year-old Harem Ahmed Abu Bakr is accused of being a member of a gang behind the crossing. 2 people survived while 4 are still missing. He's due to appear at Westminster's Magistrates' Court tomorrow. An error at a lab which saw thousands of positive COVID cases reported as negative could have led to at least 20 people dying. Investigators at the UK Health Security Agency say the mistake at the Wolverhampton lab meant nearly 40,000 PCR tests were reported as negative when they were positive between September and October last year. It's thought the error led to around 55,000 additional infections. Bosses at the UK HSA say they fully accept the findings and recommendations made in the report. The government has given the go-ahead to build the Sizewell C nuclear power plant and committed £700 million to the scheme. The plant, which is being developed by French energy giant EDF, will be built in Suffolk. Ministers say the move will create 10,000 highly skilled jobs and provide reliable low-carbon power to the equivalent of 6 million homes for more than 50 years. China's ambassador to the UK has been summoned to the Foreign Office over a diplomatic row following the arrest and alleged beating of a BBC journalist covering COVID protests. A heavy police presence has been reported in several cities in China to deter further protests after unrest over the weekend. Earlier today, the Foreign Office Minister answered an urgent question on the matter. He says the UK government is demanding a full and thorough explanation over the arrest of Ed Lawrence. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.1989 and €1.1582. The price of gold is £1,461 and 22 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100 hits a 3-month high. It closed at 7,512 points.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by 2 of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
OK, let's get stuck into the meat and bones of this show. Now, stats released from the 2021 census have shown that the number of people in England and Wales who identify as Christian has fallen to just 46.2%. The number of Christians has dropped by 5.5 million since 2011, the findings have discovered. There's also been a 4.3% decline in the number of residents in England and Wales who identify their group as white. And indeed, just looking at some of the stats I had in front of me a little bit earlier on from the ONS, it would appear that the demography of major cities, London, Birmingham and Manchester, has shifted to the point where it is now minority white. So what impact will these shifting demographies have on our society and everyday lives? Other news outlets shy away from this kind of stuff. I want to get stuck right into it. Let's discuss this with Rakib Ehsan, who is a social policy analyst. And joining me in the studio is Paul Morland, who is a demographer. So, a fantastic panel of people here to pick this one apart. Paul, I will start with you, as you are right here in the studio next to me. The changing demographics, as it were, the idea that Birmingham London and Manchester are now minority white, according to the stats that I'm seeing here. Should that concern people at all?
I think whether it concerns people is very much a value judgment, and we should have an open debate on that. I think what should concern people, though, are the causes of this, which is that we have a real demand for people. We have a shortage of labour despite the sluggish economy. And yet, because we've had 50 years of below replacement fertility, whatever people's race or religion in the UK, overall we're having too few children. Run that forward for 50 years and you either run out of workers or you have to have mass immigration, and that means ethnic change.
Rakib, I will bring you in now. Rakib Hassan, a social policy analyst. When people are looking at the lack of Christianity in this country, or I suppose the drop in Christianity is a better way of putting it, again, should people be concerned about that? With Christianity in decline, is Britain in decline?
Well, I think, again, that's purely the decline of Christianity. Many people will see that as a sign of progress, or that this is secular, rational progress at work. I have a slightly different view. If truth be told, I think that when we're looking at the decline of Christianity as an organised social influence, I just wonder, when you look at some of the problems that we have in society, crashing marriage rates, depressingly low birth rates in the mainstream, accompanied by stubbornly high levels of family breakdown, how does the decline of Christianity feed into that? Some people say that it might well be an influential factor.
OK, all right. Well, Paul, I mean, are we just heading head first into the fact that over time, every single major city in England is going to become minority white? And are we heading for a reality one day maybe of a either majority atheist or, dare I say it, majority Muslim population?
I don't think anything is inevitable. I don't believe in inevitability. I believe that what we're seeing today results from the choices that people have made over the past 50 years. Now, if people want to continue to have a relatively buoyant economy, if people want to have workers in all sorts of jobs, and they are not prepared to have children themselves, whether they're white, black or Asian, then we will need to have mass immigration. Now, in the past, we've had mass immigration from many places, including Europe. We're having it less from Europe because of Brexit, but also a lot of European countries have got very low fertility rates. The number of young Poles who could come here, for example, is diminishing enormously. And the only places that are going to have really big population growth over the next 20, 30 years are going to be in Africa.
Well, I do get that, absolutely. And I suppose maybe in certain cultures, in certain parts of the world, they are having more children. I mean, they are, aren't they? But I can't help but wonder whether or not some of the lower birth rates, not when it comes to this country, when it comes to Poland, or, I mean, what we're going to see in Albania, if 2% of the male population of Albania are already over here, then either someone's going to have to put a massive shift in Albania, or they're going to see their birth rate diminish. But, Rakib, can I just ask you about some of the issues about things changing too quickly in this country, for some people, that is. So this melting pot, when it comes to integration now, we've already seen issues in places like Leicester, for example, of, some would argue, kind of foreign turf wars playing out on the streets of Britain, OK, against certain communities. Are we going to see more of that? You know, issues when it comes... We've got a high Jewish population in parts of North Manchester. I know that well. In North London as well. I know that well. I've lived in both of those parts of the world. Issues there maybe when it comes to Palestinian sides of things or Middle Eastern side of things. You know, are we going to end up seeing... I hate to use this phrase, but I'll say it, you know, foreign drama on the streets of Britain?
Well, I think that what we saw in Leicester, we saw subcontinental style sectarianism playing out on the streets of a regional English city, which is quite remarkable. I think that the one takeaway from the 2021 census data for me is that there has been an intensification of ethnic and religious diversity, even though we see the number of people who say they have no religion increasing and there being a decline in those who describe themselves as Christian. So I think that the one thing I would take away from the data that came out today on matters of religion and ethnicity is that we really have to ramp up our efforts from a social cohesion perspective, because the degree of ethnic and religious heterogeneity we are witnessing in Britain will bring its challenges from a community relations perspective.
Yeah. Paul, your views on whether or not white British Christians have a right to say, I don't quite like what I'm seeing in terms of the direction of travel. Some people would say that makes you a racist. Some people would say you want to just cling on to your culture.
Oh, I think people absolutely have a right to say that. And as a white but non-Christian person of immigrant parents, I feel very privileged to be in the UK. I feel very privileged to be a Brit. And it's not for me as a member of a minority to tell the majority what they can and can't say. Now, I think all these discussions need to be held sensitively, and there's no room for racism. But I think it's perfectly reasonable for people to argue they want a more or less diverse society. You can't have the debate in which you only say diversity is good and any other opinion needs to be shut up.
Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah. Go on, Ricky. I can see you want to get involved with that. Talk to me.
Oh, no, I agree. And I think that one of the discussions we have to have here is that there are certain ethnic and religious groups, Patrick, which prioritise, for example, the institution of marriage, family building, having children. So I think that needs to be part of the debate. We've seen, in my view, a rapid secularisation of the mainstream. But if certain groups prioritise family building more as an essential part of their adult life, then you're going to see that reflected in demographic changes in modern-day Britain.
Yeah, and I think, Paul, I'm paraphrasing here slightly, but it's an interesting discussion, this, and I'm glad that we can have it, because I think a lot of times this stuff gets silenced. Paul, is it, without wanting to be too crass, if white Christian or just white British people don't like what they're seeing in terms of the way the country's going, they just need to get busy and have more kids?
Well, they can have more kids, that's one thing, and we are a democracy. We should have an open debate about these things. Parties should have particular views and particular policies, and then if they come into power and they don't put into practice what they've said in terms of more or less immigration, then it's for the electorate to hold them to account. It's not just about fertility, it's also about immigration, it's about policy, and it's about politicians being held to account in terms of fulfilling their promises.
Yeah, Rakib, again, back over to you now on this. Do you think that for too long in this country we did have something Paul was alluding to earlier, which was just not diversity at all costs, but only one real view kind of allowed in the mainstream when it came to it and when it came to mass immigration, etc. And now what we're witnessing really is maybe the flipping of that coin, where we are potentially staring down the barrel of Britain one day becoming a minority white country, Christianity not becoming the large religion in the country, etc. And do you think maybe the ship has already sailed with that? People just have to accept it?
Well, I think that it's important that we have debates on matters of immigration, integration and identity. I do think that when we're looking more generally at the latest census data, I wasn't surprised by many of the patterns which emerged. But I think one thing that I really would reiterate is that we can't react to the new census data by adopting an uncritical view of diversity. I think that we have to acknowledge that if we have this kind of intensification of ethnic and religious diversity, we're going to really have to work even harder to maintain social cohesion, whether that's in cities such as Leicester or my hometown of Luton. So, absolutely. So what we really have to do is invest more in bolstering community relations, particularly in hyper-diverse urban parts of the country. I think that's going to be very important.
Yeah, again, I just want to emphasise very quickly, Paul, the final word for you. Rakib, thank you very much. I've enjoyed this. But Paul, I want to emphasise this. I don't think that high levels of diversity necessarily is a bad thing at all, or that it necessarily leads to directly to issues. But are you concerned, Paul, that there might be issues with social cohesion and, dare I say it, increased racial tensions if we don't manage the levels of diversity well enough? And I don't want to force integration, mainly because I don't really know what that looks like, but do we have to do something to make sure that things are cohesive?
Well, I totally agree. I think it isn't a matter of migration and it's a matter of diversity, but it's also a matter of identities. And identities are fluid. And when I was growing up, I was growing up into a country which I think had a single culture to which we were expected to fit in. I don't think we'll ever return to that. But an overarching national narrative to which people can give their affiliation... It's binding, isn't it? It's very important. It is binding. And without it, I think there will be social disintegration.
OK. Both of you, thank you very much. Rakib Ehsan there, who is a social policy analyst, and as well, that was Paul Morland, who is a demographer. Cracking discussion, that. Thank you very much, both of you. Right, now, it's going to be a tense evening here. England are set to play Wales in just a couple of hours' time. Let's take a look at the points so far. England need just a draw to go through to the last 16, while Wales would need to either win by at least a 4-goal margin, never going to happen, to qualify, or beat England and hope that the game between Iran and the US ends in a draw. So it's all to play for. What would it mean, basically, for England to top the group and Wales to come second? Joining me are two men who know all about playing for the home nations, former Wales international Robert Earnshaw and former England international John Fashanu. Great stuff. Yes, OK, right, who to go to first? Who to go to first? John, I'll start with you. Right, predicted score, first and foremost, John?
I would say 2-0 to England. That's being nice.
That's being nice. Well, OK, Robert, same question to you, Robert Earnshaw. Predicted score?
My heart says 2-1 Wales, but my head says probably 2-1 England.
OK, all right. John, if you were approaching this game, right, and you were Gareth Southgate, what would you do differently? The clamours for him to play Phil Foden are deafening.
Well, you know, let's be honest. I mean, the last match has been fantastic. Everybody's so happy and comfortable with what a great win. So I would tell Gareth, if I had the opportunity to even talk to Gareth, I would tell Gareth, tell the boys to do exactly the same. Exactly the same. You know, when you're playing Wales or Wales are playing England, it's always a war. It's like a local derby. It's like Manchester City playing Manchester United. So you know that everyone's got to be 110%. And anything can happen. That's the truth. Anything.
Yes, now, everyone loves a bit of an underdog, Robert, don't they? I think England, it's fair to say, they've not been quite at their fluent best. What would it mean for the Welsh to stick one over the English?
Well, it would mean everything. This is the game that everybody's waiting for. It would mean everything. In a World Cup, the biggest game against England, of course it means more than just beating, if it was beating Iran or USA. It means more, but this would be huge. This is the game that everybody in Wales has been waiting for. So any win, no matter what happens after, any win is a big party going on in Wales after that.
Right, now, both of you, can I just say, it's a real honour for me to be talking to both of you, because I've watched you both on the telly for ages and ages and ages, and I'm a big football fan myself, and I'm a fan of each of you. John, now, you were notorious for being pumped up, but also being quite good at, let's be honest, intimidating the opposition in, frankly, a footballing world that I wish we had a little bit more of than what we do now, where you've got players throwing themselves to the floor. I mean, you'd have had none of that, right? But if you were in that England dressing room now, I want you to get the lads pumped up for this game against Wales. Come on, do it, bring it.
Come on, boys, come on, you can do it. You know you can do it. Come on, baby, let's go.
Good, I love it. Oh, that'll do. To be honest with you, I'm absolutely terrified. Right, OK, but I'm going to throw it over to I'm going to throw it your way, Robert. If you could give a team talk to the Welsh lads, what would you say? You were dreading this question, weren't you? Go on, what would you say?
Absolutely, I was dreading it. I can't believe you put me on the spot. Listen, all I need to say, you've got the dragon on your shirt. Let's go. Go beat them.
Fantastic. Look, both of you, well, just very quickly, what are you doing to watch the game, John?
I'm going to sit at home with a nice cup of tea with a scarf around my neck and watch.
Just a cup of tea? What's going on?
That's it, yes. All doors closed.
No
visitors.
No visitors. Take the phone off the hook. Robert, am I right in saying are you already in a bar?
Yes, I'm in London. I'm going to enjoy the game here. The scarf is already on. You know, there's way too much white and red around, so we had to splash that red back in for Wales.
Lovely stuff. Look, both of you, thank you very much. Thoroughly enjoyed that. Good luck to both sides, I suppose. Of course, I'm rooting for the English, but I do love a bit of the Welsh as well. Fantastic. We've got former Wales international Robert Earnshaw, former England international John Fashanu. If you're not pumped up, Wales and England, after hearing those two talk, then nothing will get you going. But up next is Jubes and Co. with the wonderful Michelle Dewberry. Jubes, what you got coming up?
Oh, I tell you, they've got me going. I was sitting there going, yes! I was almost about to kick a ball and go for it. They motivated me that much. I'm definitely looking forward to the football, Patrick, and more, though, looking forward to the scene, the state of some of the people that I was watching GBNews earlier on. They were in the pub in Wales about 11 o'clock this morning. Some of them, I remember a guy doing the Caterpillar or something. I cannot wait to see that pub revisited tonight at 7 o'clock. See how many of them are still standing. But before then, on my show, I want to talk about the fact that less than 50% of this country are Christians. Does that matter? Is it important? Also, I want to talk about this whole notion that a load of Tory MPs, knowing that they're probably going to lose their jobs, they're talking about setting up a new breakaway party around the red wall. Is that the answer? Is that going to work? And then this whole kind of safe but legal but harmful side of things. Where do we all stand on that? I've got to say, for once, Patrick, I'm on the fence on this one a little bit.
Oh, there you go. All right, Michelle, look, thank you very much. It'll be an absolute rip-roarer as usual. Michelle Dewberry there. Can I just say, I think I just need a John Fashanu alarm clock, right? The idea that he was going to be screaming at me, like, going, get up, come on. I mean, it's terrifying, isn't it? But it would get me out of bed. Thank you very much. You've been watching me, Patrick Christys, right here on GB News. I'll be back again at 3 p.m, but don't go anywhere, because the wonderful Michelle Dewberry is on your screens next.
Hello, I'm Ada McGivern from the Met Office. If you're lucky, you've got blue skies and sunshine this afternoon. Western areas, northern Scotland, but for many other areas, it's widespread low cloud, mist and some stubborn fog patches persisting through the day. At the moment, weather systems are approaching from the west, but they're slowing down. They're coming up against high pressure, which is holding firm. And that's why we've got light winds, dry weather across the UK, apart from 1 or 2 showers in the far southeast, and this extensive area of low cloud, mist and fog. Now, the bright white areas are where we've got fog. Southern and central Scotland, parts of northern and central England and Wales. Hill fog predominantly, but some mistiness at lower levels. Some fog patches further west and north as well under clearing skies overnight. And it's here where we're likely to see a touch of frost come dawn. But for most, it's 3 or 4 Celsius and another gloomy start with some poor visibility on the roads during Wednesday morning. And again, it's going to take some time for that low cloud, mist and fog to lift in some spots. The fog will persist through the day, for example, North York Moors across the Grampians into the southern uplands. But for, again, northern areas, western areas, and in the south, we'll see brighter skies. A freshening breeze, 12 Celsius in Devon and Cornwall. That's as high as the temperatures will get. For many, it's mid to high single figures. And for Northern Ireland, it clouds over with some rain arriving later on, that rain pushing into western Scotland by evening. It's light, it's on and off, and it will be accompanied by a freshening breeze. But it will keep the fog away on Thursday morning. Elsewhere across the UK, it is extensive low cloud, mist and fog once again. Some very dense fog patches and widespread across central and southern parts of England, so it could be tricky first thing on the roads once more. And that fog will take some time through Thursday to clear. The sun, of course, is weak at this time of year. So another misty, murky day on Thursday for many. Friday brings a freshening breeze from the east, so it's going to be brighter, but it'll also turn a bit colder.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget